From Toronto to Tokyo, and from Thonia to Syrinx, this is The Basement, your companion to the Ready Player One novel. Join our hosts each episode for complete chapter breakdowns and deep dives into the pop culture references through a series of challenges and homework assignments. The Basement is the Ready Player One podcast for people who love things. And now, please welcome Albert and the rest of the Gunchers for this week's episode. Hello, Gunchers. You are in The Basement. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 0019, Catch the Wave. Tonight, we are going to catch the wave in a big way as we review, that sounded super cheesy, but we're going to review Chapter 19 of the Ready Player One novel. We'll get into, as usual, the summary, the narrative, and break down all the pop culture references that we find throughout the chapter. And joining me tonight, again, is my co-host, Mr. Will Wilkins.
How's it going, Albert? Hey,
cool,
congratulations. By the way, if you're keeping score at home, we have officially reached the halfway point of the novel. We just passed it.
Nice.
So, only another year of listening, and then we will have reached the conclusion.
Right. Yeah. Ready Player 2 will be old news by the time this show is over. No, thanks for doing that and for bringing that up, because that really makes me feel terrible. Hey, before we get started, I teased this on social media today, and I think we teased it last week on last week's show as well, but we are going to do something at the very end of the show. So, and it's something we've, never done before because we've never actually had the show for that long. But we are going to do a true taste test of this product right here. So this is New Coke. I'll tell you how I got this in a little bit later, but we're going to have Will's got a can. I've got a can. I think Will's got a couple cans, actually. I don't know where he got those from.
I've got several cans of this. They were not cheap. They were not 50 cents, but I'm sure Albert will go into that later.
Yeah.
But throughout the show, so, I am something of a connoisseur of fine Crown Royal whiskeys, and Crown and Coke is my go-to when RC Cola is not available. Oh, can you hear that? Just the unscrewing of the lid. So I'm going to do something I've never done, and that's have a Crown and New Coke, because when New Coke came out, well, I was 10 years old. So without getting CPS involved, we were not allowed to drink. So throughout the course of the evening, I will be trying this. And because I only put enough Coke to slightly discolor the alcohol, we should have plenty left for the end of the show.
So how much New Coke did you pour into that? Just rough estimate.
Well, the expression is New Coke for color, right? So you're not putting a ton in it. You can't be a lush and just say I'm drinking straight whiskey all night. So I would say that the ratio is about 25%.
25% New Coke.
Of New Coke, yeah.
All right, well, give it a whirl here. Tell me what you think.
Oh, that Crown's delicious. I'll be honest with you, Albert, I can't taste anything at all.
Really?
And maybe I've never done this before. I mean, heck, I could have been getting Coke Zero for years and not knowing it at bars. So
right.
I'm just going to say, if you put enough Crown in it, it tastes just like original Coke.
Yeah. So it's kind of like Tabasco. You put enough Tabasco on something and can't really taste anything else but the Tabasco, right?
But I'm going to say, let's let it marinate on my lips for an hour or so as we go through the show.
Okay.
And then see my tongue. Yeah. Not that sounds any better.
Any better, no.
But and then we'll come back to it and see how it tastes.
All right. Well, you keep drinking there. I don't. This is gonna be interesting. I don't know. You'll be able to taste much by the time we get to the end of the show if you keep that up. So. All right. Well, let's do this. Let's get into Chapter 19 of Ready Player One. Let me give a quick summary on what happened in Chapter 18. After receiving an exclusive invite to Ogden Morrow's 73rd birthday party at the Distracted Globe, Wade struggles with what to wear and how to declare his love to Artemis, who he knows will be at the party as well. While at the party, Parzival and Artemis dance the night away and go back and forth on the validity of dating. Artemis breaks up with Parzival, or at least makes it clear that they were never dating to begin with. When suddenly IOA crashes the entire party, they crash the birthday celebration in an attempt to take out Parzival and Artemis. With the help of Ogden Morrow, both of them survive. However, not before Parzival realizes that amidst the chaos, Artemis is gone, and with her, any hope of ever getting back together. At least That's what I think is happening in his mind. And that kind of brings us to the end of chapter 18. Now, 19 starts off kind of dark and gloomy, and we talked about this, right? He's already kind of crossed over, going back to the hero's journey. He's crossed it, he's in the belly of the whale. Oh, he's almost getting to the belly of the whale. He's going through a metamorphosis at this point, or at the beginning of a metamorphosis, which kind of falls in line with the hero's journey as well. Yeah, but he's down in the dumps. He's got a hard time getting up in the morning. He spray painted his windows completely black so that he doesn't have to look out there.
Point of clarification.
Yeah.
According to several pages of this text, he has no problem getting up.
Yeah. Right. No,
it's true.
No distractions whatsoever. He doesn't want anything to interfere with the goal right now, which is he's put Artemis to the side. He is hyper focused now on the mission at hand, which is the egg and solving all the riddles and all that.
Is he though? Because in this chapter, he doesn't talk a ton about it. It's the self-loathing chapter.
Yes, it really is.
He narrates as if I'm solely focused and I'm taking my focus away from this to focus on, the hunt for the egg. But ultimately, he does nothing to advance that.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that he's doing is just self-deprecating. The entire. This is the most depressing chapter ever written.
It really is. I mean, when you get to the part where he's shaving his eyebrows, you're like, dude.
So he doesn't technically shave them, right? He's using some wacky substance that just automatically removes his hair, so he doesn't have to shave.
Yeah, and sorry, I'm using shave as in removal. Right?
Oh, yeah, right. Yes,
technically speaking, no, he did not.
Sorry. I didn't know you were using the colloquial shave.
Shave.
Well played.
So no personal interaction, no deliveries, and so this it comes to what's most forefront in my mind right now is COVID-19 and just where we are today as Americans or as society, right? Where we don't have a lot of social interaction, where social distancing is kind of what we do and what we preach and what we practice. Well, at least some of us do. But this is kind of like he's kind of like the pioneer. And of course, Ernie Klein had no sense of this would ever come to be. But this does feel very COVID-19, where he's just kind of locked himself up and he's an introvert, right?
Yeah, I don't know. So. Yeah, I get the drawing the similarities between the two, but he clearly needs a therapist, right? I would say there are obviously some people who, because of social distancing and isolation, are having issues that they need to deal with. And hopefully they're listening to this podcast and it brings them a little joy. Yeah. But at the end of the day, this dude he's tripping. He's not, this ain't normal level of behavior.
Yeah. And he's in a downward spiral, right? He's knows that people are on his heels in the hunt. He's lost the love of his life, the girl he was loathing over, or not loathing, but lusting over for so long. And probably has no hope that he'd ever see her again. But so going back to, he talks about a lot of the things that's like his everyday life now in this one small apartment and not having social interactions with people and really wanting to close the entire world, the outside world out. But he talks about how there's a great scene in there where he's talking about how he orders his food and how he gets delivery packages and all that. And again, Ernie Klein had no sense of what was going to happen, or at least with COVID-19. But when I hear all that and I'm reading it, it very much reminds me of like what we do today with like Uber Eats or DoorDash or whatever it is. Is that DoorDash? What's the other one? The food.
There's a bunch of them. DoorDash, Uber Eats. What's the other one?
Favor.
Yeah.
So anyways, but there's a lot of delivery things. And then you think about Amazon, the rise of Amazon, how we get everything delivered to us. But I mean, I've ordered everything now from cold foods and had them delivered. I've ordered hot foods, had those delivered. I've had baked cookies from Tiff's Treats here in Austin, and they bring them in this like metallic, or I don't know, the inner liner is like kind of like this aluminum metallic material. But like, so just quickly, what's the craziest thing? Is there anything you can't buy these days that cannot be delivered to your house?
No, I would say there's absolutely not. So in fact, when I bought my BMW and my wife bought my Jag, we never test drove them. We ordered them online and they brought them.
Right.
I mean, and
I've heard that they bring them over to you. You can test drive them if you want. And if you don't like it, they'll take them back.
Yep. It was fantastic. And I think more people should do that, because it's way cheaper to buy like sports performance cars outside of your local market. Because typically for like a BMW dealership or a Jag dealership or even Porsche, you have like one dealership in a major metropolitan area. Maybe if you're like in New York, Chicago, you have 3 or 4. But if you're buying online, you can buy from any market and you're basically only going to pay the transportation cost, which is like $800. But if it's going to save you, and realistically, when I bought the Porsche, it saved me close to 30,000 buying it out of market.
Wow. Yeah, it's quite a and because I mean you're removing a lot of the overhead that they have for, just the interaction with the people there, negotiating, the actual space that they pay for, lighting, right? There's all these costs that come off or come out of the price when you don't have to go into someplace and be there in person, which I think makes sense.
Yeah, brick and mortar overhead's crazy.
It's super high.
And I think more importantly, like, because we were doing this way before COVID-19, we are an absolutely bring it to me family, but mainly because I'm all about the time value of, the time value of money matters to me. We've talked about it before. Efficiency matters to me. And the idea of roaming around a grocery store for 2 hours to find stuff and then eventually buying $200 worth of stuff when I really just needed like 4 items.
Right.
And then those things just sit on the shelf and expire. Doesn't make any sense to me at all. Like there's no reason for me to be in a brick and mortar store. In fact, the mall to me is just a place I go to look at things I will later buy online.
Yes.
That's the only reason it exists.
Yeah, and I see people all the time, like at Walmart, Target. They're going in there, they're taking pictures, they're looking it up on their phones. You can see them pull up Amazon, looking at the price difference there, ordering there, and then they're out. And I mean, this is all kind of is telling, right? I think it's going to lead to the eventual fallout of a number of retailers. We're already seeing that. I mean, we talked about this when we were talking about what was it, Kmart, right? And we listed off some of those other companies that were in bankruptcy as of 2019, but this is kind of where it's kind of happening and where it's coming from. And I will say this, prior to COVID-19, we didn't order a single thing for groceries online. Now, almost exclusively everything we do for grocery shopping is online. And I don't know if that will go back. Like to your point, I don't like, I like I know I'm paying more, sometimes to the tune of $20 more when I'm the guy that will do the receipts and just check each one out. But I'm okay with paying the more money because that's $20 of my time. Like, what is my time worth?
Exactly.
If it takes me 2 hours to go out there and find those same items, and someone's going to bring them to me, I'm coming out ahead there in terms of that.
No, plus, for your listeners that are in San Antonio in Texas, right? HEB, they have the subscription service, and I think what is awesome is, we're prone to have parties now and then and barbecues. We have a lot of people over, and if we end up under ordering, because we have that subscription with us, they'll deliver to us in less than 30 minutes, anything. Right. Yeah. So if I need another rack of ribs, 2 more bags of ice, and some Cokes, they can just bring them in, and I never have to stop drinking Crown and New Coke. I can do it the entire time.
Right. So, yeah. And so this, again, going back to the novel, I mean, he's kind of living this life. And again, the novel was written 10 years ago. So it's cool that this was what he was thinking was going to be, this weird kind of scenario. And here we are living this literally every single day of our lives right now. So,
but I don't think that took too much foresight on his part. I mean,
no, we were already
in its prime. Amazon was in its prime, pun intended.
Yeah, no, that's fair. You're right. We were already down that path. And same thing. So on that level, we're going to talk about the next thing here, which I feel like is something that he was talking about, but we were already kind of heading that way. And that's so he goes in and he logs, like his biggest thing that he has for getting into the Oasis is his console, basically, right? This computer that he's built. And he talks about how he built this from all these different parts. It's all state of the art. And he spared literally no expense when it came to building this thing. And he does mention one thing that we're not going to talk about as a true pop culture reference. He talks about all this being built on Odinware, and which is, Odin, Thor, that whole Norse mythology thing. That's probably a play on Alienware, which, back in 2010, they were still today they're kind of like one of the higher end gaming computer rigs.
I think once they got bought by Dell, it was meh.
Yeah, all right. They kind of lost some credibility, I think, for some of the hardcore gamers when that happened. But nonetheless, that was referenced there. But he really did spare no expense. So, and we talked about this in the last episode, right? He buys all these gadgets and all these upgrades that allow him to smell things and see things and feel things. And to your point, like if I'm going into the Oasis, not to rehash this, but these are all really cool gadgets to have. But if it comes down to like combat, I don't want any of this stuff, right? I don't need anything coming in and interfering with my senses that are going to make me or put me at a disadvantage. But the question I have for you is because we didn't talk about this, what is something that you would want to have all of those or upgrades and peripherals and stuff like that. To if you were in the Oasis, what's an example of something, and keep it clean? What's an example of something that you would like
Over
really
here.
want to have to if you were in the Oasis to take advantage of those things?
Well, I think the next step of home entertainment should really, because we're really touching on senses, which senses are the most practical for you to have. And in me, like any sensory touch application is a liability in the Oasis. It would be a liability in real life, except in undisclosed websites that we won't discuss here. But otherwise, I think the olfactory's got to be next. I think that's the next immersion piece. That look, I think it'd be great to have it when you're just out seeing a movie. You're watching The Godfather. They're eating some Italian food. You get a little whiff of it. That's awesome. And then all of a sudden they pull the gun out, puts a round out there, and you can smell just that. You can smell the muzzle of the firearm just smoking. That'd be cool.
And they've got this now. I mean, you go to like these theme parks and they've got like these 6D and 8D and I don't know how many dimensions they have, where they do throw different smells at you, and they have mists and water and all that. And some of those are actually pretty cool, but they're certainly immersive, but they really don't break the barrier like something like a 3D virtual reality system would do. So it's not the same thing, but they're doing what they can with this.
Yeah, I think what the Lilo and Stitch ride, the one that just got closed at Disney World, had this little part where he farts and the whole crowd can smell it. That was corny.
Yeah, the kids love it, but as adults, I'm thinking, like going on virtual trips would be nice, right? Heading out to like on a virtual trip to Europe.
Going to Mars.
Yeah.
Sign up here.
Well, yeah, that was
give them the air. I'm gonna just keep doing this.
Yeah, I need to get the reins here. There's but yeah, something like that would be cool. I think about like my childhood memories and being able to like relive the smell. We grew up in a very small town in Michigan called Shelby, and the only thing we really had going for us was a lumber mill, and just the smell of fresh cut lumber. I haven't smelled that in forever, but the pines and the different trees that were mostly pines actually, but all that pine smells, like all that brings back a lot of memories. And if I had the opportunity to do that in the Oasis, I think that's something that I would want to crank up everything on, just to kind of experience that all over again.
I think you just wrote a John Denver song, like in that moment. I could smell the lumber and the pine. What in the heck?
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, happy birthday, Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah, the boss.
It's the boss's birthday.
Nice. So here's one thing that I think that again, not knocking Arnie Klein, but like cloud computing versus local computing. I think this is where I can't imagine, and he does go into like how much space he has on. He doesn't really give us a size, which is good for him. He played it safe. The last thing he wanted to go is say 3 terabytes of data, and here we are, fast forward 10 years. I'm like, oh, that's it. He just says there's enough data on there, there's enough hard drive space or space to store 3 of everything in the entire world. So whatever that comes out to. But
hey, did you notice that was capitalized? I didn't even check to see if that was a reference from something.
Oh no,
because that line, he capitalizes the everything ever written or whatever it is.
Check that. I'll keep talking. You can check
Roger that, sir.
So yeah, the idea here though is that cloud computing wasn't really a factor in here, and I think if you look where we're going more and more today, is a lot of things are going obviously to the cloud. A lot of things are already in the cloud, and the next big jump is cloud computing versus actually having something here that's doing all your compute. Now, will we ever get to the point where everything is strictly in the cloud and you don't have hardly any computing happening? My guess is yes. Same thing with graphics. I think about like when we were playing 3D games back in 1994, 1995, even maybe a little bit earlier than that. Maybe about 95, 94, right? Those 3D games, when I saw those, I was thinking, wow, if they can do this, and then 2 years later, the graphics were that much better, and then 2 years later, they were that much better. I think it was like Moore's Law or something like that at the time. But there's no doubt in my mind that we will probably get to a point where there's, virtual reality and our own reality are indistinguishable because of the compute power and because of how much we can throw on a screen. So all of this, I guess, is what I'm saying is will come to fruition at some point. It's just a matter of time. and
And I was going to
technology.
explain that to you last week. We didn't actually get to quantum computing
Oh,
when we
geez.
were talking about
Let's talk about
astrophysics,
his
but
treadmill. Let's talk about the Okagami run around treadmill slogan, because we brought this up last week, I think, in the Buckaroo Banzai, but their slogan was, no matter where you go, there you are. So, and that's obviously a reference to the Buckaroo Banzai movie. We talked about that being the quote that we didn't like. It didn't really make a lot of sense. But anyways, I just want to point that out. The next thing I want to talk about is just personal assistants. We know that he has Max Headroom as kind of his personal assistant. He shows up in this chapter. He eventually goes away when they break in and extract him, and then he comes back a little bit later. But I was thinking about this, like, have we ever had? And I'm stealing a joke here because I listened to the '80s on 8, big surprise, which was on Sirius XM, and they always have this Teddy Ruxpin commercial talking about how he was our personal assistant back in the '80s. And if you think about it, it's kind of true, because he would interact with you and you could put different tapes in. He would talk back and forth. But the question for you really is, how much do you use like the AI stuff like Siri or Alexa or Google? I don't even know what Google is. It Google Assistant still, or what is it called now?
yeah,
For the
it's just
same
Google.
thing? Okay.
Yeah.
Are you doing like all integrated? Are you talking to stuff while you're at the house if it's not your own family?
No, but I talk to stuff when I'm driving, like like some random, brain spiral piece of information will hit some random synapse in my brain, and I'll be like, "Hey Google," and then my phone's like, "What's up? Hey, search videos for whatever,"
Mm-hmm.
and then it'll just play it. So I would say probably for driving all the time. I mean, obviously, I'm a proper nerd, so I have a well integrated smart home, but I don't talk to it all the time.
Yeah. So I asked because I noticed the kids you do that a lot more. Like, they don't want to type anything in. They want to talk to something, and they will talk to something. And
Just
I've
not
seen,
humans.
yeah, not humans, right? And I've seen kids that will use like Siri, or not Siri, Alexa will do like bedtime stories for you. And they, not that they would prefer that over like parents, but it's an option for them, and they don't have any problem with it. Like, that's a viable option to go to bed at night, is to have this AI computer read you things, and it's just kind of spooky and eerie. But I don't know, I guess we're getting there at some point. So personal assistants are probably going to go a long way. And there's another movie that came out called Her. Did you ever see that with
Oh
Joaquin
yeah,
Phoenix?
there's
I
two
heard really
movies
good
that
things about it, but yeah, there are a couple. Yeah, you're right. And I picked that one because that was the one that I was interested in seeing that I never saw. But I heard a lot of good things about it, and a lot of things that said, "Whoa, this is kind of where we're going, and it's kind of eerie."
Hmm.
So, any thoughts about it other than you liked it?
Oh no, I mean, I can see that happen. I can see introverts getting attached to their AIs for sure. I do think that at some point that will be an adequate substitute for companionship.
Mm,
I don't think we're there yet, but I mean, I think anytime that when these first started coming out, like when Siri first started coming out and Alexa started coming, I mean, everybody was just trying to see the funny things it would do. Like, I wasn't actually using for any practical application. I just want to see if it would sing me a song or tell me a joke,
yeah.
or if Siri would tell me what it thought about Samsung, or, like, you're just asking it questions like that to see if you can get some crazy responses.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think the next generation, not our generation, the next generation, to your point, will be the one that really turns the corner on the use of
Yeah.
AI.
So where does this thing end, though? Do you think are we destined to kind of live among, AI to the likes of like the movie AI, artificial intelligence, Steven
Yeah,
Spielberg,
and they're
or
going to look just like that kid.
yeah?
I mean, all of them. If they're not looking like that, they're going to look like what's his name, whatever that sex robot guy was in that.
Oh,
Remember that?
so Haley Joel Osment versus what's his Jude
I
Law.
don't know. Jude Law.
Yeah.
That's an underrated movie, in my opinion.
Oh no, it's
You
a great
gotta
movie.
you gotta be in there for the whole haul.
It's
I
a
know a lot of
tearjerker.
people hated it, but for me, I thought the messaging was worth it. I love that movie.
Yeah.
Highly underrated, in my opinion.
Yeah. Do you think we'll ever get to the Terminator franchise?
Yes, of course. It's the natural progression of things. I
Mm.
think that if computers become sentient and they are starting to determine what makes sense to do, I mean, I get accused a lot of being far too pragmatic in my approach to things. Like, I don't, when it's time to get to work, it's time to let's set our emotions aside and find the most efficient route from here to there. And I don't like to argue about math problems. And so it often gets me in conflicts at the house where it's like, oh, you're too much of a robot. Yeah, but once you see the logic or the rationale of a course of action, it's hard to put up with someone's opinion.
Right.
There's a problem. There's an appropriate time for someone to emote and have opinion. What color would you like this room? But even that, if you were somebody who studied art, would say, well, what's the purpose of the room? Because if it's a rack, it should be blue. And if it's your, a restaurant, it probably should be red or a green tone, or, there's colors that associate with the psychology of people. Yeah. So there's always a rational answer that needs to be given. So I think when AI takes over and that extreme rationality comes both at the macro and micro level, it's going to just come to be that you walking skin bags of liquid have no purpose.
We're not contributing
on our planet. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it too. I hate to think about it and hate to be that person, but it could happen. So hopefully we put in safety guards and safety nets to preserve our humanity. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Enough of let's take a tinfoil hats off. Skynet. By the way, I saw Dark Fate, which I hadn't seen yet. I just watched that the other night. I thought it was actually pretty good. Like I didn't mind it.
I have not seen it.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It's got plot holes, and there's certain things that you think about that are kind of like, well, I don't really get that, but suspension of disbelief, pretty good movie. I enjoyed it. So good follow-up to Terminator 2, by the way. It's supposed to be like the actual sequel to T2 and not the other 3 or 4 that came out afterwards. Okay, enough about that. So at this point, we talked about his metamorphosis. He's an antisocial hermit. He's got agoraphobia, which is the fear of like crowds and going out into crowds. He shaved his head, or at least he got his hair removed everywhere, which would be kind of cool, maybe. Kind of weird with no eyebrows. But and then he's starting to work out, but only because he can't work. He can only get access to the Oasis because he programmed it so that he would be forced to work out because he was starting to gain so much weight that he wanted to slim down. And I think that he kind of leaves it off by saying that at this point he's going to allow that to stay in place because he likes being healthy and he likes having, a lot of energy and not feeling like a sloth, as he says in the chapter. And then lastly, before we get into pop culture, there's one liner. It says, having the right 80s song lyric memorized might save my avatar's life someday. And this is obviously foreshadowing, not necessarily saving his life, but we know later on with the Rush album, having an 80s song lyric memorized is going to pay out for him down the road. So kind of cool that he threw that line in there as well. But yeah, overall, really self-loathing. We get a lot of information about what his day-to-day life is, his daily routine, and it's not really exciting or pretty. It's kind of depressing at times, but I thought it was a good chapter. It gave you more. There was definitely, this chapter gave you a lot more of what life was like, or what life was like for him, or just in general in this world, or in the future of 2035 or whatever year it was. Any final thoughts?
Nah, this chapter was dark. It was depressing. And there's more visuals on a couple of pages that we didn't talk about, right? Yeah. There's at one point in this chapter where he says the word masturbation 4 times in 2 paragraphs, like within 8 sentences of one another. Yep. It's ridiculous.
Yep.
But I get it. And then there's a bunch of other stuff that follows that piece, and you're just like, whoa, this is well, Ernie's sharing too much, bro. Yeah. Because up to this point, we've talked about it several times on the show, that really Parzival is just Ernest Cline. He's talking about himself, like the way that he approaches things. So this is that chapter. This is what Ernest Cline should have had in the incognito mode of this book and just kind of left it out, or released it as some fan fiction, like anonymously on some website. I don't.
I think he was just trying to keep it real. My problem is, it's kids reading this book too. Like I've seen schools that have issued this book out in like middle school.
Really?
Yeah.
Nah, bro. Not this chapter.
No, I know. No. And it's like and then it gets pulled. Like they pull back on it, and they're like, it gets deferred to high school, which.
Yeah, no. You're going to have to go Munich circa 1940 and start throwing some of them books in a fire. There's just no way. And in fact, so I read this chapter, and so I immediately throw the freaking Blu-ray in, and I fast forward to that section. And it happened. Like all that stuff didn't happen. He have a sex doll or nothing.
Nope. Yeah, they don't even touch on
Woefully disappointed. So then I went on the internet and was able to find some of that.
Fanfic.
You can call it fan fiction.
All right. Well, let's get into Zip Pop. All right. We got quite a bit to talk about, but all this, I will probably chuck through here a little bit, or we'll chuck through it pretty quickly. Let's start with Wham, and we're going to start with Wake Me Up Before You Go Go. This was a song by Wham, which was a band from 1981 to 1986. The reference is, in the weeks since Artemis had dumped me, I had a hard time getting out of bed in the morning. So I disabled my alarm snooze feature and instructed the computer to blast Wake Me Up Before You Go Go by Wham. I loathed that song with every fiber of my being, and getting up was the only way to silence it. So this was a sensational pop band from the UK. There are two primary people in this band. There's George Michael and that other guy. They started in 1981, and together they sold over 30 million records between 1982 and 1986. They only released 3 studio albums, but it was 1984's "Make It Big" that became ingrained into American pop culture. Like, you could not escape anything that was Wham related in that year. I can attest to that. The album reached number 1 in the U.S. and the U.K., and it was the only album that spawned the worldwide sensation known as "Wake Me Up Before You Go Go." So what's your take on this song? Because I don't know that, again, we've never talked about this. I thought we liked George Michael in the late 90s, early 90s together. But
I definitely love George Michael.
Yeah. Were you a big Wham fan?
So, yes, because, and here's the reason why. I mean, remember, we're at the time around 10 years old.
Yes. And
and unfortunately, Wham is one of those bands that gets victimized, almost just like Vanilla Ice did, just like MC Hammer. I don't care what anyone says, right? Wham was huge, MC Hammer was huge, and Vanilla Ice was huge when they dropped.
Yes.
Now, they faded to the point where it wasn't cool to like them, right? So I will tell you, as a 10-year-old, Wham was awesome. And the idea of anyone being gay in Wham was the furthest. I didn't even know what that meant.
Right,
real talk. Right. I didn't even know what that was about. So for me, that was the coolest dude. I will say that personally, this song did not age well. By the time that I was in high school, my musical taste had changed, just like yours, so dramatically that you would not have, seen me ever listening to anything by Wham, right? Because we were at that point dyeing our hair and putting on eyeliner so that we could listen to The Cure, Depeche Mode, and
I don't remember the eyeliner.
They Might Be Giants. Yeah, we did dye our hair together.
The hair, yes. We did not
real
do eyeliner. Stop.
Real talk.
Stop embellishing it. You're not doing anything for us.
It's kind of my thing. You got to make the story better. Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. That's right.
I've heard that many times.
I'm going to say now, I'm the age I'm at, I'm still cool with it. This song is slightly annoying, but I think it might just be because of the overplay in the 80s.
Maybe. Yeah, I enjoyed the song. I still do. I mean, I've got it on my 80s mix, the basement mix, because, it's a staple of, you cannot escape the 80s music scene without having, confessing that Wham was just a big part of it and a big influencer during that time. The name of the song came from a note that Wrigley is the other guy, Andrew Wrigley. He left for his parents. He meant to write "Wake Me Up," but wrote it with the word "up" twice. So it said "Wake Me Up, Up." And then he wrote the word "Before You Go Go" just to be funny. George Michael saw this, thought it was a great little "Wake Me Up Before You Go Go" thing. Thought it was cool, funny, and then backed into the song from there. So, and I think that more than anything, I think I remember, what are you building back there?
Oh, I was making another drink.
Okay, sorry. I thought you had the hammer out. I can't see your face right now. So this song, I think more than anything, I remember the shirt, like the Choose Life shirt, which was kind of a big deal. And the video itself, right? The video was huge on MTV, got lots and lots of airplay, of course. And then these shirts went on to be worn by other people as well. The shirts were from, you can see up here, the Choose Life. I've got a picture of some of the other ones that this designer, Catherine Hamnett, had created. She did one for Queen's drummer as well. I think it's one of the, like one of the African tours or one of the African concerts they did. One of the really big ones they did. You can see him wearing it's like basically a pro or anti-nuclear missile type shirt. But she went on to create a whole bunch of these. And there was a lot of controversy at the time, especially considering that it says "Choose Life." And, you think choose life, that must be, anti-abortion. And that's really not what it was about. The shirt was actually created for anti-war, right? Choosing the lives of people over, bombing them or killing them.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did. I was exactly this many years old when I learned that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, exactly. And I didn't know all this growing up. I mean, I saw "Choose Life." I'm like, yeah, choose life. I have no idea, no concept, no, bearing in terms of where this was going, left, right, middle, whatever. And, Catherine Hamnett has come out a number of times and said that, no, that's not what the shirt was about. It was about anti-war, and it was used. This slogan of "Choose Life" was used by right-wing,
Oh yeah, for
far
sure.
extremists at the time. And come to find out, and a lot of them didn't know that he was gay. So then you got the I don't know, the dichotomy of somebody who's gay and trying to who's pro-life. That doesn't normally jive. So it was just a
Right.
big controversy that eventually got buried. I mean, this band broke up in '86, and at that point, Michael went on to kind of live his own life and do his own thing, and became probably
Mhm.
arguably bigger and better because of it. So I think that was the only thing I had on this one. Oh, and I went down this rabbit hole, by the way, when I was watching this, and there was a reference that this was in an episode of The Fall Guy called Spring Break. Oh my goodness. I think I watched like 8 episodes of The Fall Guy that night, but it is in the Spring Break episode. And they play a minute and a half, like 1.5 minutes of the song in that episode, along with a number of other great 80s songs as well. So if you're interested, you like The Fall Guy, or you like a lot of Skin, go watch the Spring Break
What
episode
the
of The Fall Guy. It's over the top.
nice.
We don't have that show in here either. I don't think it gets referenced in the novel, but
So
well.
these guys, before they were Wham, before George and Andrew got together and formed Wham, they were in a band before that, a high school band called the Executives. So then Wham was formed. Andrew did like a lot of the work for this, and they were actually discovered on Top of the Pops, which was like American Idol back
Yeah.
then in the early 80s in the UK. And if you look at, and you can find these music videos out there for the music that they were doing at that time, and this is before Make It Big came out, George Michael's style was largely rap.
Really?
Terrible rap.
I've never heard any of it.
All right, so look, literally one of the songs is called Wham Rap. And then in parentheses, it's enjoy what you do, ? But yeah, he has 2 or 3 songs, and some of those were remnants from the Executives that they were performing, because they were actually not supposed to be on that show. The group that was supposed to be on the show dropped out. They were available on short notice. They jumped in there and killed it with Preteen Girls, and the rest is history.
Wow. Yeah, I had no idea he did rap music. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that now that you've.
Oh no, it sounds like the background sound. It sounds like. Remember last week we were talking about how Blondie's like, oh, I rap.
Oh yeah.
It's like that, only
Gotcha.
over a Wham beat.
Nice.
So there you go.
I can take that. I'll dig it. I'll get into that.
You
All right,
shouldn't.
let's do this. Let's. We're gonna talk about what is this called? Husky Jeans. So this is kind of a last minute ad for us here on the basement. I threw it in and surprised Will. In fact, I think I told you like literally
Just to traumatize me
before the
Just
show
to
started.
Take me back to 12-year-old me. So I had to face the reality that Husky wasn't a brand. It was a cut of jean for fat kids. Thanks,
Aw,
man.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
So, hold on. Let me give you the reference because I want to be clear. We're not going to fat shame anybody here. I think we both went through this, and that's part of why I wanted to bring it up. But it is referenced in here, and I felt like it originally wasn't going to include it, and decided last minute to go ahead and do it. So, the term husky for jeans or clothing probably originated around the 1950s. Like, there's a guy out of Purdue who's a professor, and he's like a professor of like retail management or the retail industry, right? Like this guy knows everything about it. And he went out and polled a number of other universities, some of the top executives at some of the big retail chains and stores and all that. And no one could really attest to when this term came out of husky. The best I could find was at one point the term husky was used as it was a play on corn husks, right? So you think about a corn husk and it's got that really tough sinew kind of strands that are in there, right? That was supposed to be representative of like the muscle. So if you were husky, you were supposed to be really kind of stringy but brawny at the same time. Somehow that kind of morphed over time, and it took a more negative connotation of being chubby, right, or being a little overweight, or as for kids. And they use this term husky for kids, or for mostly for boys, especially for us. Like you said, I grew up in 70s, 80s. And there were times that I was in and out of my weight, and mom would tell me, "Oh, looks like we're gonna have to get you the husky side." And I thought, well, what does that mean? Like, am I pudgy, or is it like Chunk from Goonies, or how?
That's exactly who I was growing up. I was Chunk. That was the character I related to in Goonies. Come on, guys, let me in. That's me. I didn't do the truffle shuffle, although we made my little brother do it quite often.
Nice.
But
Oh
anyway,
yeah,
yeah,
we did do it. We did
I
do
did
that.
rock husky jeans. And the embarrassing thing about husky jeans is it actually said it on the tag. Like
Yeah.
you put tough skins out here, but if you look at the 101 jeans that were popular at Sears, they said husky. Right? Like it would show your waist. I don't know why they still do this. It's the most embarrassing thing. Like you just like move someone's belt so you can be like, geez,
Okay, you're
42? What's wrong with
42. How you doing there, 46?
Hey, what's up there, big guy?
Yeah.
But
Not
you didn't have
cool.
to do that because you look from a distance because the number, you could just see it. Like it wasn't going to say slim. It's husky. But look, I kind of owned my stuff. I wasn't a guy who was, I wasn't self-conscious about my weight
Yeah.
because, we're 26% Hawaiian, and on the islands being fat or husky is a sign of royalty
Absolutely.
or
Yeah.
eating well.
And so, and I kind of, let me give you the reference. It says, I could no longer fit comfortably into my haptic chair or squeeze into my extra large haptic suit. Soon, I would need to buy a new rig with components from the Husky line.
See, he's ridiculous. Like he's trying to say Husky's above XL. Easy, killer. Easy on some of us. All right.
Right. So, and like you would think by this point, given all the social consciousness that we have, that they wouldn't use Husky. But I can attest that I went out and did the research. JCPenney, Kohl's, Macy's, Old Navy, and there are a number of other ones. In fact, I have a picture right here of a pair of trousers that Gap has, and they do still use the Husky size. And if you look, there's some other, I say funny stuff, but maybe funny sad. But there are other things where they polled men and said, did you ever wear Husky? And it brings back kind of like what you said, like this visceral negative reaction of like, oh, I hated the fact that I was labeled a Husky person, or I had to wear Husky jeans or Husky clothing. But it's just funny that you would think at this point, here we are 70 years later from the 1950s, maybe even more, depending on when it originated, that we're still using this label of Husky.
So real talk, 1981, I'm crying in a Sears because I'm having to put these Husky jeans on, right? We're going there for the purpose of Husky jeans. And so I can vividly remember this. This is how much it affected me. Is that the store clerk's trying to explain to me that they're not for fat kids. They just have more room in the waist and in the bottom, and they have more room for your thighs. Yeah, because you're fat, buddy.
Right.
You're not making me feel any better. I'm gonna go kill myself. At one point, I had considered removing the label from those jeans and then just putting another label on them so that you'd be like, oh, he's slim. Those doesn't look slim, but that's what it says.
Yeah. Yeah. I wore these, and my brother wore them a lot as well. I think even my youngest brother may have worn them at one point, but I think it's, I don't know. It was a funny reference that was in there. It certainly brought back a lot of memories. I'm glad it brought back memories for you. Hopefully
That's fantastic. What are we going to talk about next? The first time I was jumped in middle school?
As a matter of fact, no, we're not going.
Here's a picture of the guy that punched you.
This is your life, Will. All right, let's get into Altair 7 or Altair 6. Here's a reference. These arms could rotate the chair on all 4 axes. So when I was strapped into it, the unit could flip, spin, or shake my body to create the sensation that I was falling, flying, or sitting behind a wheel of nuclear-powered rocket sled hurtling at Mach 2 through a canyon on the 4th moon of Altair 6. So I'm going to let you take this away because you found some interesting stuff on Altair 6, more than I knew. I guess there's more to hear than just on the surface.
Yeah, so I mean, this is obviously a Star Trek reference to Altair 6. It exists both in the movies, the television show, and in a lot of the literature. And so Altair 6 is known for, well, first of all, it's located in Sector 9 and is the 6th inhabited planet of Altair. The image that I'm showing is actually the star chart from Star Trek that shows where Altair 6 is. I don't even know where it is in there. I couldn't be bothered to look for it in the image that we produced. But the story goes that there's a constant war between all the Altair within the Altair system, interplanetary war. So humans go to Altair 6 in 2100 and establish it as basically the home colony for all of the Altair system. So Altair 6 starts fighting with 2. That goes on from 2200 to 2260. So basically, 100 years after the humans show up in the Altair system, we start going into 300 years of war. right? And in 2267, I guess from a movie reference perspective, the Enterprise was supposed to be on a mission to Altair 6 when they got redirected for Kirk's birth in like Rebirth, when he was going to be a teenager, and what was that, the third one after Wrath of Khan. So chronologically, Ernie's keeping it together here. But the reality is it's a real star system.
Huh.
So, and it's located in the Aquila star system. Which,
you got a picture there. I can see that.
Yeah, that's the constellation. It's Altair 6 is the brightest star in that system, right? And
is that the one right here at kind of like the very end
right
of
at the apex? In fact, in some cultures, it's considered the top of the column, right? All the way there. It's been featured. The Altair 6 has been featured in science fiction since the 1950s. It's featured in the Tommyknockers. That's where the aliens from the show V that was big in the 80s are from. The Altairian dollar is referenced as a common currency in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So it's not something that's unique to Star Trek. Roddenberry was probably inspired from some of the science fiction work of the 50s that used it as a reference planet. But probably most notable for Altair 6 is it's the setting for the Kobayashi Maru. So that's the famous test in Star Trek. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, give me a breakdown of what Kobayashi Maru is all about.
So this was where they were, it's a simulation, I think, that they present to like cadets, and they're in the neutral zone. They're not supposed to attack. They're put in a situation where they feel like most cadets and most people would feel like there is no other solution but to attack. And eventually, they all die. Like this is kind of like a no-win situation, if you will, for them.
So it's more than that. It's a deeper psychological test about leadership, about what you should do, because it's not a question to attack or not attack. It's a question whether to allow a disabled ship that's in a Klingon neutral zone, right, to just leave it there so that you don't violate Starfleet policy and just leave, right? Or you go in and do the morally just thing and defend that ship, knowing that in moving into that, you're going to be violating this interstellar law, and you're more than likely going to be attacked by Klingon bird of prey, which is exactly what happens in every simulation that occurs. So this is featured right at the beginning of Wrath of Khan. And it's featured in just about every Star Trek movie makes reference to it. James T. Kirk, even in the new ones. So James T. Kirk is known for having defeated the Kobayashi Maru. It's one of the things that makes him famous and well known amongst Starfleet cadets, is that he's the only one that beat it. But he beat it by cheating, right? He literally reprogrammed the system in order to allow him to win. He built a module in it that would drop the shields of any Klingon birds of prey that would come into the simulation so that he could easily kill them, which is what he does. It draws the ire of people when he does it. But it serves as the basis for some West Point cyber security training. And they call that training module Lessons from the Kobayashi Maru, that cheating is fundamental. And when you think about it, it makes sense. Almost everything on the IT world, I mean, even if you were looking at The Matrix, the movie The Matrix, which probably does the best job, in my opinion, of pushing that concept forward, is that the idea is to find where the rules are and then how to navigate effectively within those rules in order to win or do things that the programmer didn't intend for you to do. It's the foundation for what we've been doing since the onset of console gaming. It's referenced countless times in Ernie Klein's books, not just this one, where you have a protagonist who is operating beyond the boundaries that were intended by an application. So outside of just the IT space, Albert, can you think of a time where you were presented with a Kobayashi Maru situation, a scenario that any choice that you made was absolutely going to cause you to lose?
Oh, let's see. I think what comes to mind is any conversation with your significant other. Sometimes negotiating with toddlers seems to be a good one as well. But I can't say, like, in all seriousness, I can't think of like a scenario that I've ever been where it was truly a no-win. I mean, I don't really have I mean, there's been situations where it's like there are going to be consequences in either scenario, but the objective is still achieved, right? I think I've achieved the objectives, even though there were consequences or setbacks because of the actions. But I don't think I've ever been in a situation where it was a complete failure, and regardless of whatever way I choose. And I think that's partly because I just don't live a very adventurous life or get put in situations like that.
Mm.
Now I tell you this, we for scouting, like I'm big into scouting. We don't use the Kobayashi Maru, but the idea of you need to understand the rules and play around the rules or use the rules to your advantage. That is fundamental in scouting. And Mr. Neil Sega had joined us a little while ago. I don't know if he's still watching or paying attention, but he knows this better than anybody, right? We train these boys and girls to think outside the box, to take what's been given to you, listen to listen to the rules, take what's been presented to you, and work around it. And we encourage them to do it, right? We encourage that kind of thinking outside the box and that flexibility in in all that. So it's just something very fundamental that I think we teach from a very early age. And I think you see a lot of times when you think about scouts, they're always bright and really great kid citizens and all that, and that's kind of what they're coming from, a place right there. So.
Yeah, and I think that we've talked about this before. I think it's also what makes really good IT people, right? Is that they understand where the box is and they know how to operate around the box.
Yeah.
So you see it at the office all the time. Like I might get somebody who has gone to Duke, has an IT degree, and has gone through that process of being properly educated in IT. But he is consistently outperformed by some kid who learned how to work a computer on an outdated PC that he had in his basement.
Mm-hmm.
He never went to school until he started working for us, and then he took night school to get there. But he gets it better because he's operating beyond the boundaries that were set for him.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes education, I'm a proper doctor, but I will tell you that if there's any limitation of academia, is that sometimes we so clearly define the box that it makes it impossible for people to operate beyond it. And failing to operate beyond the box, failing to have the imagination or the artistry to do so, limits our technological advancement. Every major technological advancement in human history was the product of someone's imagination, not just technical acumen.
This guy know how to party or what?
I'm here to tell you.
Man, you're spot on. You're preaching the gospel. I get it. Don't disagree.
I was about to slam a book. Oh, let's get going.
All right. We're going to talk about Uber Betty or Betty Page now. And we'll keep this clean, PG. I know we got kids that listen to this, so I definitely want to keep this clean. But there was the reference here, driven by loneliness, curiosity, and raging teen hormones, I'd purchased a mid-range ACHD, the Shaptic Uber Betty, a few weeks after Artemis stopped speaking to me. So this is one of the devices, I guess, or apparatuses or whatever else that he hooked up to his Oasis rig for other personal endeavors. But let's talk about Betty Page. So she was born Betty May Page, and she's known around the world. I mean, to this day, it's kind of funny. You throw this picture of it, most people can tell you who she is, but she's a pinup girl that was really popular in the 1950s, went on to do some things in the 60s. And she's got this trademark of like this. You can see the picture. She's got the jet black hair. She's in some kind of stiletto heels or boots of some sort. She normally has the bangs, which are kind of her trademark signature haircut that she wore. And this was she was an artistic inspiration for millions of women. But the funny thing, and we're not going to spend too much time on here, but there was a whole nother life of her. Like after she went through this high level of success. And I would say even that, like today she's way more famous and way more popular than she ever was, even in her prime, like during the 50s and 60s. There was a time when she converted over to Christianity. I think she joined like Billy Graham or one of the more famous evangelists at the time, and she converted and wanted to kind of leave this life behind her. She stayed that course for a number of years. She started having some kind of mental issues and psychological issues, and she lost a lot of money. She was kind of down and out for a number of years. And then there was this huge resurgence, like right around the 80s, right? That started coming back. And then certainly into the 90s. And that's when everything kind of peaked up again. And she became way more popular from that than she ever did. There was a comic book that was written about her. I think that was released by like Image Comics at the time. There's been a number of other performers that have been inspired. You think of like Christina Aguilera. Madonna has done something with this. I'm thinking like Rihanna, right? The whole lace and leather look that she's got. But there's this, she's had a big influence on the world. But I think what most people don't realize is that she kind of left this life behind her and decided to go to Christianity, which I thought was an interesting move for her. I mean, I don't know if that was just because she found God or she was beginning the first steps of going through some kind of mental or psychological issues. But I don't know. Would you? I can think of like girls like in the '90s, like in high school that we knew, and some of the girls even in college, even into like the mid to late '90s, and they were very much dressing like this. They had the really jet black hair,
Mm.
white faced, really dark lipstick or like bright red lipstick, and the bangs were going on. Certainly this look kind of lends itself to that whole The Cure and Morrissey and all those that kind of vibe or feel. But you remember anybody that was really into Betty Page?
Yeah, so as an Air Force veteran, pinup girls and Betty Page in particular, right? So she was actually hitting her real prime, like most pinup girls in the 1940s during World War II,
Hmm.
right? It has a close connection to Air Force guys because they would commonly paint pinup girls onto, bombers that were flying over Germany, right? As the time there's not a lot of chicks around, so getting these pinup girl magazines in the 1940s for our military was a big deal. That's when it really rose. And I don't know about other guys, but for me, this is my favorite look. It's sexy, it's sultry, it's classy at the same time. Maybe not this particular image you have up here, but to me, it is the most effeminate look for a woman. And I think it's because of that classical 1940s era,
Hmm.
which I love, which lends itself to the bangs and the entire look that you're describing.
Yeah.
Not this all leather look, but
Yeah.
even just all of it, where it's like slightly teasing, but still quasi respectable.
Yep.
I absolutely love this and love Betty Page. And I recognize she made that evolution over to Christianity, and that's great, but that is not unique. It seems to be a trend. I mean, there are at least a half dozen porn stars who have done the same thing in the last 20 years that I heard randomly. I
Right.
know nothing of that. I've done no research on it. That's not
Yeah.
true.
And it's we don't know what kind of demons they have, and maybe they're seeking to feel different and feel better about it, and they have regrets about it later. Who knows? Who knows what goes through their minds? But yeah, she certainly was a huge influence and continues to be a huge influence even to this day. I think she's worth more today than she ever was even at her height. So her popularity continues to grow, and they've done a number of books and movies and documentaries about her. So if you're interested in all that, you can certainly go check all those out.
What I do know is that look is better than a chick in husky jeans. And
That
that is
is 100% true.
that's a fact.
Yeah. Now, if she put the husky jeans over this look, maybe.
I think it still work. I mean, I think so. The military you've seen like the BDUs that military guys wear, right?
Yeah.
Military personnel wear battle dress uniforms. And there's a saying, if a woman looks good in a battle dress uniform, she is smoking hot, right? Because that's the most unflattering
Yeah. Covers up
we
everything.
possibly have. And if you see someone in that, you're like, wow, she's amazing. She's even hotter than that.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of hot, no, I'm kidding. Here's Marie Curie. Marie Curie. The reference, the same goes for Marie Curie. Before she discovered radium, you can be certain she discovered the little man in the canoe. Now, we're not going to break down that reference.
What
But we are going to talk about Marie Curie, who was she was alive from 1967 to 1934. She was a French physicist, and she's credited with a number of firsts. She was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize. First woman to become a professor at the University of Paris. She's the only person to win the Nobel Prize twice. She did it in two different scientific fields. She did the first one in physics back in 1903. She did it a few years later in 1911 for chemistry. She's best known for not only discovering radium in 1911, but that year they also discovered polonium, which both of those led to the discovery of X-rays and the technology around X-rays. So she's kind of credited as kind of being the birthing atomic physics, if you will. She's also, and just kind of a bit of trivia, I think it's, if you find the element, you get to name it. I think that's kind of how it goes, right? If you kill it on the side of the road, you can take it home. But when she discovered radium, she named it after ray, like for X-rays, because that's what, she was really into at the time. And then polonium was named after Poland, which is where she originally came from. So she's of Polish descent and grew up in France. Now, sadly, and this is what I didn't know, sadly, she passed away in 1934, and she passed away from a plasticemia because she used to walk around with these vials of radium and other radioactive material, and she would just put them in her pockets. And I mean, no, I'm sure she didn't know, right? I mean, this is all cutting edge stuff, and wasn't aware of some of the repercussions for doing so. But she ended up dying basically from radiation exposure, given the number of years that she had spent in her work. And I've got a picture of her on the left hand side here in the bottom right hand corner. That is her and her husband, who was also a physicist. And going back to what I said, when she won that first Nobel Prize in 1903, she actually won it with her husband. So they did work together, and he's got a number of accomplishments himself. This whole family does, by the way. Like, the daughter went on to, and I didn't get this far into it, but the daughter went on to win like I think a Nobel Prize, or she had another big discovery. There's somebody else in the family. I think there's 5 people in total that were a part of this family over the course of like 1930, or I guess 1903 up until 50s and 60s, that were all contributing to science in some pretty significant and major ways. So pretty cool stuff.
So Marie Curie, first of all, I was shocked you didn't know how she passed, because I thought that was common knowledge. You must have skipped that day. Sir.
I was not there for most of that course, honestly, in chemistry.
So Marie Curie, what I find fascinating about her is the amount of backlash she got from the scientific community when she was working was phenomenal. Like, there was a lot of people who were working against her success, and she was progressing scientifically in spite of having no support. Even though she was the first professor at the University of Paris, she wasn't initially. She had applied several times to get into the prestigious university for her work in chemistry and physics, and they just weren't having her, right? And so eventually they did accept her, but then she had a little dangerous liaison, and it became tabloid news. They used it to try to shame her, to try to get her out of the field. And the scientists who came to her aid to really, and sent her personal letters telling her, hey, don't worry about the critics, continue to do what you do, continue to do the great work you're doing so that I can build upon it, was Albert Einstein, right? Another immigrant.
Yeah, I had actually read that they were close. I wouldn't say close, but they did a lot of work together. And there was a famous summit, or I guess where they brought a lot of these physicists together, I think right before World War II.
In Brussels.
And she was, she and her were on this like team, like this tiger team that they created. So kind of cool that she's rubbing elbows with that guy.
We're not going to talk about tiger teams.
Oh, sorry.
Ever.
Bad IT term. Okay. Well, that's Marie Curie. Pretty cool. She did a lot of great stuff. So thank you. Speaking of great women, here's a picture of Erin Gray. Now, we've talked about her on episode 13, but we're going to talk a little bit more just quickly about her, and where she went on beyond the role that she had in Buck Rogers in the 25th century. So this is the references before that. My system agent software had been modeled after the actress Erin Gray of Buck Rogers and Silver Spoons fame. So Buck Rogers, again, 1979 to 1981. Erin Gray she's still around. I mean, obviously she's still doing a lot of stuff. You can see here on I've got in the bottom right hand corner, she goes around to a lot of conventions and does signings and that sort of thing. She's got an agency as well, where she goes and tries to hook up people with famous actors that were in science fiction movies and fantasies for special promos or, charity work, that kind of thing. And so if you're an ex-actor that was in one of those genres of fields, you can go to her agency. I think it's called Heroes for Hire or something like that. And they'll try to get you placed at different things and can make sure that you're in the circuit and still doing work of some sort and that kind of thing. So she still does that. She's been in some stuff very recently. She was actually in an she was in a movie in 2017, which I have not seen. But the one thing that jumped out at me is that she was actually in Mystery Science Theater 3000. She was in episode number 11, or in season 11, episode 1. This was the Netflix reboot that they did back a couple of years ago. And she was in there as a guest star. So she's still active. She's still doing things whenever she can. But yeah, she's, we probably talked enough about her in the last episode, but she went on to do something else, which was called Silver Spoons. So nice. I'm gonna let you take away the Silver Spoon stuff. But this is it's all the same quote. But go ahead, take it away, sir.
All right. So Silver Spoons, which is one of my absolute favorite 1980s television shows, because ultimately, Ricky Stratton's the guy everybody wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
So this show ran from 1982 to 1987. And the synopsis for the show is pretty straightforward. Ricky Stratton is a one percenter who is everything that the Reich was looking for in their youth in terms of personal appearance, but with all of the problems of a kid in the 1980s. So if you watch this show, some of the fascinating things to me about this show is when you look at this in the context of other 1980 shows that were out there, like Give Me a Break, Different Strokes, Facts of Life, The Hogan Family, Family Ties, Punky Brewster, all of those NBC shows, all of those child actors went to school together on the studio lot. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
Like, to imagine that all of these kids from all these different shows were hanging out during the filming. But Ricky Schroeder, for the most part, this was his first big role. He had actually been in a TV movie that he was nominated for an award before this, but this was it. Go to the next picture so we can see some of his cool video games. This dude had tons of video games. Oh, they're actually in my background right here.
Yeah.
So if you look at my background, we have all the video games that were found in the Stratton household, right? So over the course, he had Gorf Asteroids, which was eventually replaced with, so Asteroids is still here. And you can tell by the haircut on Ricky here that we're in season 1. This is actually the pilot. So with Asteroids, it was later replaced with a fake game called Swamp Wars. But that Swamp Wars game, when it shows up, is in a Space Duels cabinet. They got Tempest, Pac-Man.
What's going on there? Why is it covered up? Did they not get the rights for that?
I think it's just the angle, because if you watch the show, you can see it. Okay. Now, this cabinet, interestingly enough, was placed here for advertisement for the game. Asteroid was eventually taken because, that game was getting kind of old.
Yeah.
That game was going to be replaced with something. Dragon's Lair ends up making an appearance in later seasons, but that cabinet did not exist in the wild. You couldn't go out there and find it.
Nice.
And that's about it. But what I thought you would like is a special shout out to the people that, freaking
painstakingly go through and check this out.
Yeah, and check all of this out. And there's a website called Starring the Computer. And
yes.
You can look at.
That's a great website, by the way. Sorry.
All of it. So I got 2 off of this, but I actually watched a bunch of Silver Spoon's episodes and noticed that, hey, man, he didn't even capture all the times that there was a computer featured in this. So right off the bat, in episode 1, there's a computer, and I did my best to try to find out what kind of computer this is. And, it looks like one of those old IBM terminals, not even a PC at the time, but couldn't find it. And that scene is when they're trying to find out who Ricky's dad is. Now, a running thing in this show is most of the kids that appear on this show have the same name as they do in real life. I guess they just figured these kids weren't smart enough to remember what their name was.
When they got called.
Ricky, Alfonso, all the young kids have the same name. So that's the pilot episode. So part of the premise of the show is that he's in military school. His rich dad doesn't even know he has a son. And so they're looking him up on a computer and find out who his dad is. And then he finds out, going from a boarding military school to being a rich kid, and the whole culture shock associated with it.
Yeah.
The second image kind of shows you their use with ours and Ernie Klein's very favorite Trash 80. Right. Using it in this episode. This was the first crossover for Silver Spoons. There were several, and Different Strokes had several also. Mr. T made guest appearances on both shows. But interestingly, both of these kids had similar stories, right? They were poor kids that didn't have parents, and then all of a sudden, one has Mr. Drummond, one has Mr. Stratton, and they're rich. So what I found fascinating about the season 1, episode 7 episode there, that plot is that Arnold from Different Strokes inadvertently finds out all kinds of NSA secrets by hacking into the FBI's computers a full year before War Games came out.
Interesting.
Just saying.
Maybe they got that.
Broderick taking stuff away from what you're talking about. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Next, you see the ever popular Apple IIe featured in season 2, episode 2. And then my favorite reference is season 3, episode 23, right? And you see that's an IBM 5150, one of the newer models for that time. But what's great about this episode, and I encourage, if you're going to watch an episode, go watch this one, because it is considered to be the first depiction of online dating using BBS dial-up in a television show. So the plot line is Ricky is chatting with some chick online. They're hitting it off really well. They end up deciding that they're going to mail each other pictures because their PCs can't handle images yet.
Oh, nice.
They mail each other pictures. He finds out it's like this real popular girl at school who's incredibly beautiful. And then he doesn't think he has a chance. But before that, he's thinking she might be hideous because he doesn't know what she looks like. It is exactly the same problems that still exists to this day.
Yes.
Right? It's absolutely crazy. So that episode is called Grokking Can Be Dangerous.
What is grokking?
They refer to this process of chatting online as grokking. And so apparently tech nerds did adopt grokking in the 1970s. It actually comes from a 1961 science fiction novel called Stranger in a Strange Land.
Oh, yeah. We've mentioned that before. Sorry.
Yeah. So originally within the novel, grokking, or grok actually in general, is a adjective that means a ton of things. It means every emotion of love, hate, fear. I guess it's kind of like saying
Smurf.
Yeah, Smurf. It's a Smurf. But in the late 70s, early 80s, it was adopted by nerds to mean a profound knowledge of something. Like, if you had profound knowledge of a certain programming language, you would say, yeah, man, I'm grokking all over that.
I grok that. And I grok Ready Player One.
There you go. Exactly. You do. The Star Trek nerds had it in the mid 70s, and there was a line of shirts that said, I grok Spock. So that was kind of their thing.
You changed that K to a P, and you got a different meaning there.
Or the S and the P to a C, and it's another thing.
It's all downhill, buddy.
We're right back to Wham.
You got a lot of explaining to do at that point. There's so for my take on the show on it just quickly was I really liked the show, and for the same reason I like Different Strokes. We didn't have a lot of money, and it was nice to live vicariously through these kids that had unlimited funds and see all this great technology and just whatever. I mean, didn't they have a slide at one point that it came down on, and it's like this was just like the perfect land. And as a kid you want to be rich, right? That's like one of your goals, and you're very materialistic, and you have don't understand what that even means and everything that comes with being that, but you just want that. You want that life, and we got to see this kid live it like every single day and just be envious of all the stuff that he had.
I think it was a reflection of the times in society, right?
Oh, so sure. 80s
Strokes. You had this. You might remember The Toy with Jackie Gleason, Richard Pryor. Same setup. Like all of those are the same setup. Of Annie, even when it was re-released in the 80s, the version most people know. We're not even going to get into the remake because it's a hot steaming mess. But they all have the same setup. Yeah. And I think it's because we were a society that was largely coming up, and most of us didn't have anything. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason they're the 1%ers, right? There's not a lot of them. Alfonso Ribeiro. So if you know Alfonso, most people would just say, "Oh, it's Carlton."
Yep, that's
nobody
Carlton.
In my family knows what this dude's name is. They just know it's Carlton.
Yep.
So he was a dancer before he was ever an actor. He was on Silver Spoons. He joined in season 3 and was Ricky Schroeder's best friend. They remain great friends today. But he started on Broadway, and that's that first picture there. He was in The Tap Dance Kid, and then he really hit it big. As continue our theme of all things soda related by being in the Pepsi commercial starring Michael Jackson.
Yep. I remember him from that commercial still.
Yep. Does the whole dance move. And what's funny is he is a proper dancer, a properly trained from the age of 6 tap dancer, right? Choreographer, tap dancer, does the Michael Jackson thing. And then everything anyone remembers him and his dance legacy is doing the Carlton. It's got to be terrible for you that you spent all that time and then everyone just remembers that.
Yep.
But it served him well. He was in Dancing with the Stars and won Dancing in the Stars in 2005, in part doing the Carlton.
And I never understood that. Like, not that I cared, I really didn't care. I don't think I've ever really watched one single episode of Dancing with the Stars. I can truly say that. I've seen clips when they come on, and I know at one point it was when it reached its like mass hysteria level of acceptance here in U.S. culture. There was, I remember when this came out, and they had him listed, and I knew he was a dancer. I knew what I'd seen what he could do on that show, although it was, he was playing it up and overly doing some of the moves like the Carlton, et cetera. But I thought that seems unfair. Like, it seems like he has a really unfair advantage. So not that we need to get into this, but I just question the laws or the contest rules for who's eligible to be in, because, you put somebody like him up and then he's going up against, I don't know. I don't have a good example because I've never seen the show, but obviously somebody who has no rhythm, has never danced ever in their life. And you got to think there's no way that person is going to beat somebody like Alfonso. He's just too talented. He's got it in his roots, in his, in his bones, if you will, literally.
Yeah, I have no idea what the rules are. I've never actually seen this show. Like I know it exists.
Yeah.
But I don't. I'd have to do the research just to figure out who was even on that show at the time.
Yeah.
But interesting. Jason Bateman also making his screen debut on this show. But the producers found that people love Jason Bateman in this show, right? So Jason Bateman is one of my favorite, comedic actors. I think he's brilliant. And so on this, they found that he was drawing attention away from Ricky Schroeder. Said, man, this guy's big enough. He can have his own show. And they pulled him out, threw him on the Hogan family and continued his thing. Continues to be good friends with Ricky Schroeder.
Well, yeah. I don't know what this guy's doing lately. I've seen him on other things. He's come out on things as kind of like, hey, it's Ricky Schroeder. TV's Ricky Schroeder. But he definitely isn't pulling, big A-list type movies anymore.
Yeah, I think the last
thing
he did was In the House with LL Cool J, that sitcom, where he, ironically, was playing LL Cool J's good friend, the rapper LL Cool J, just like he played the brother of Will Smith.
Oh, interesting. All right. Well, that was a good one. All right, let's talk about is it Majel? I don't even know how to say her name. I'm going to call her Majel Barrett, and you guys can kill me, rake me over the coals, whatever. That's fine.
Oh,
Majel.
so just real quick, one more Alfonso fact for you.
Oh, here we go.
It up just so you would have peace of mind, because I know it's bothering you.
Yep.
These are the people that Alfonso Ribeiro beat in Dancing with the Star.
Okay.
Olympic athlete Lolo Jones.
Okay.
The UFC fighter Randy Couture.
All right, you can stop right there.
All right. Antonio Sabato Jr. Leah Thompson.
What?
Come on. Tommy Chong. Come on. Tommy Chong, stop beating that dude.
That guy, yeah.
Get out of here.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if I'm Tommy Chong, I'm like, they're sizing up the competition. There's no way. I'm toking hard every show before I get out there.
Here, man. Crazy.
Who went out first? Does it say?
I'm sure it does.
It's got to be Chong.
The first elimination was Lolo Jones. Tommy Chong was he was the 9th person eliminated. He was 4th. He was 1 step away from being on the podium. Right?
He hung in there, huh?
He did. Yeah.
All right. Good for you.
He beat Leah Thompson and Antonio Sabato Jr. So well done.
Amen. Okay. Let's move on. Anyways, here we go. Majel Barrett.
Oh.
Majel Barrett.
I like Barrett. Oh, do it the first way. That's got to be
Majel
right.
Barrett. Yeah. All right. Here's a reference. I'll erase you, Max. I mean it. Keep it up, and I'll switch you back to Wilma Deering, or I'll try out that disembodied voice of Majel Barrett. So she was a actress, producer, lived from 1932 to 2008. If you can see her in the top left-hand corner. This is her on Star Trek. She played Nurse Christine Chapel in the original Star Trek series. Later on, she came back to Star Trek, played Luxwana Troy in The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, which is the mother, I believe, of Deanna Troy, if I remember that correctly.
You are correct, and I
And
really like Deanna Troy.
yeah, Deanna Troy was pretty easy on the eye, especially in the 80s as a 13-year-old boy. And here's a picture of her down here a little bit later. This is her dressed as, I don't know what she's dressed as here, but this is Captain Jean-Luc Picard and Magia Barrett.
Whoa.
But she's most everybody knows her as the wife of Gene Roddenberry. She was actually his wife, and she's also known as the first lady of Star Trek. I think she's still no, she lived to 2008. There's not a lot really to talk about here. I mean, she's like I wouldn't say Princess Leia of the Star Trek universe, but she's definitely held in such high regard that she, again, they've given her the name of First Lady of Star Trek, but there are, she was really into like the Comic-Con circuits and going around and promoting it and talking, speaking about her husband. I think she's done some books and all that, but he makes reference of her. I guess what she's probably most well known though. Yeah, we see her here, we see her there, that kind of thing. She is the computer voice for Star Trek. So anytime you hear the computer talking back in the original series and even to the movies, that is her voice. And she, I think to this day, continues to be the voice of the computer.
Interesting.
So, you got anything on Magia Barrett?
Can we keep talking about Deanna Troy? Because she's hot. I didn't really think about this, but there's a lot of similarities between that chick in terms of features and my wife.
Oh,
in addition to my wife,
here.
Yeah, being in, my wife's degree was in psychology, which you kind of would have to have in order to date me.
Yep. You got to have some
we got
serious mental cojones.
Yeah. I think I'm just a 25-year case study for the wife at this point.
It's going to be one hell of a thesis. All right. You got anything else on her?
No.
All right, let's move on because we're over on time. Let's talk about the Bifrost. The reference says, the running tracks stretch out ahead of me, rising, falling, and occasionally spiraling into a helix. An invisible barrier prevented me from accidentally running off the edge of the track and plummeting to the starry abyss. The Bifrost track was another standalone simulation, one of several hundred track designs stored on my console's hard drive. And so this is him, he's talking about how he's running around, he's trying to stay in shape. And, in the Oasis, you can kind of pick whatever you want to do. You can run wherever you want to run. And one of the options that he chose was this Bifrost. So the Bifrost originally comes from Norse mythology. It's usually depicted as always depicted as a rainbow bridge of some sort that connects Asgard to Earth, right? So if you want to travel between the two, you have to go by way of the...
Actually, it connects Asgard to all the 9 realms.
Thank you.
Not just Earth.
Okay, thank you, sir. I don't know who that was, but thank you for chiming in. It is it's guarded by Heimdall, which he watches. He also keeps an eye out for Ragnarok, which is the beginning of the end, where all of the gods go down to Earth in one glorious battle, and they all die, and then we're kind of left to pick up the pieces and live without the gods. That is what Ragnarok is. So, yeah. So I don't know. I included my own favorite version here. So on the top left-hand corner is just kind of some artistic, representation of the Bifrost. The bottom right-hand corner, I've got a picture that I think that most people today are probably familiar with. That's the Bifrost Bridge from the Thor movies and all that, which I thought they really did a great job. Like, I like the way it looks. It's probably not as bright for me as I wanted to, but I get it. They don't want that to be like, the focal point. They don't want to distract from everything else going on. But by far, my favorite Bifrost representation is the one from Super Mario Kart, the Rainbow Road. And I'm kidding, that's Rainbow Road, but I always think of Rainbow Road, and that track has been in every Mario Kart game that's ever been made, which is kind of cool. You won't see it, you can't tell in the
last week we were talking about theoretical physics, and really the Bifrost Bridge is, in theoretical physics, a possibility. It's just an extension of the Einstein-Rosen bridge, which serves as a wormhole commonly. That is the bending of space-time to allow teleportation from one point to another. Although we've never observed one in real life, they could exist mathematically and served as a solution to some problems. But the rainbow, Albert, could not exist in space for 3 reasons, right? You need 3 things, Albert, in order for a rainbow to exist.
Water,
1,
light.
Yeah, well, yeah. And then an observer that's capable of seeing along the visible light spectrum. Okay. So we know that the way that water exists in space is
All right,
in
we're
a
gonna talk
vacuum,
about.
so that the pressure is
Shut
lower.
up! Shut
Okay.
up! We're not talking about this anymore.
Man,
We're moving on. You're getting gonged. We've got no time for this. I don't know what you're talking about anymore. Yeah. All right, we're moving on. Here's the Plimsolls, A Million Miles Away. This was, let's see, do I've got the reference here? I don't. Bob
no.
Saget. I forgot to put that one in there. All right. Hey, trust me, it's in episode 19 or in chapter 19. Trust me. But this is A Million Miles Away by the Plimsolls. So this is
Well,
a
here
song.
you go for your benefit,
Thank
Albert.
you. Go ahead.
As I began to run, Max fired up one of my 80s music playlists. As the first song began, I quickly rattled off its title, artist, album, and year of release from memory. A Million Miles Away. The Plimsolls. Everywhere at Once. 1983.
Thank you very much. Well done, Mr.
That goes out to Albert.
You've got Will Wheaton and you've got Will Wilkins, both reading Ready Player One. So this was the band itself, the Plimsolls. They were around from 1978 to 2007. I don't know. I've read that they're still doing stuff like little gigs here and there or whatever. But they were first known as the Tone Dogs. They included Peter Case on guitar, Dave Poa, I guess, on bass, and Louis Ramirez on drums. That sounds made up, right? But maybe it's not. They've only released 3 albums, and none of which really charted particularly well. The highest album was their debut album, The Plimsolls, in 1981, that made it to number 153 on the Billboard charts. Million Miles Away, though, however, was undoubtedly their biggest track that they ever had, and that was found on the Valley Girl soundtrack in 1983. And I've got a picture here on the right-hand side of the poster for Valley Girl, which is an amazing movie. I've come to appreciate that movie. It's pretty cheesy. And I thought about, contemplated whether or not we should break this one down. Maybe we'll get an opportunity to do so, but I definitely highly recommend that if you're interested in seeing what culture was like in the 80s, at least maybe a little bit skewed because they were really overplaying the Valley Girl aspect, but that was a real thing for a lot of people in California at the time. So that song, was pretty popular. There was so much that they re-released it again a few years later, I think in 1983, and then the Goo Goo Dolls did a version of it off their 1990 album, Hold Me Up, which I listened to, which was okay. It sounded like they kind of melded in on it. They weren't really adding anything new. If anything, it didn't seem as powerful as the original version. But this is kind of a staple 80s song. I mean, this is one that you hear. I think if you hear the song and you don't recognize it immediately, I'm not going to sing it. I'll put it in the back on the sound bed here for the podcast. But I don't think it's one of those songs, unless you're a big Plimsolls fan, that you think about the name and don't immediately recognize, but you hear it play and you're like, oh yeah, I've heard that song a billion times because it has been played a billion times. Did you like the song?
No.
Oh, all right. Next, we'll go to the next reference.
The end.
The end.
No.
All right. Well, it's a good song. So I did some math and looked up, like, if you did go 1 million miles, it would take you 40 times around the Earth. That's exactly not exactly. I think it's just over. If you go 40 times around the Earth, it's just over 1 million miles. And to add further to this, if you went 60 miles an hour around the Earth 40 times, it would take approximately 2 years for you to complete that journey.
Not uncommon to do, right? So it's not. So American Airlines even has a million miler club for people who have 1 million sky miles for the trips that they take. So right now, I think I am. So I track the amount of travel I do every year in terms of miles, how far I fly, even if it's not on my mile system, because I'm taking a whole bunch of different airlines.
Yeah.
So I am currently to the moon and back twice, but not around the Earth 40 times.
Not yet.
Have
you ever gotten to 1 million?
No. I'm not close to 1 million. It's a lifetime cumulative million milers situation. I don't think you could do 1 million miles in a year. You can't.
What do you get from these airlines if you do
nothing? So you get the special card, but no one even carries their cards anymore, right? It's all just the app. So to allow you access, the probably biggest advantage is that once you hit 1 million miles, typically your miles reset every year or 2 years, depending on the program that you're in. But once you hit 1 million miles cumulative, you stay in the highest elite status of American Airlines program benefits. So you get that. And 35,000 bonus miles, if that's worth anything to you. Mm-hmm. But I'm guessing if you're flying that much, that is the buzzing of flies. Like, my dad runs his own company. So he's a CEO of a company and he collects all of the miles, which some companies do, right? They don't give their employees credit for the miles. All the miles are booked through the company in one account.
Yep.
So he has that. I'm telling you, he probably hasn't paid for a flight since 1972.
Wow.
Right? Because he's got people that are flying all over the world all the time.
And he's collecting them all in.
Yep.
Yep.
It's impressive.
Well, with great power comes great responsibility.
Indeed, sir. Oh, well, there's
this
jacked looking Matthew Modine. Must be time to talk about some Vision Quest. You got a quote about it, or are we just going to jump into it?
It says, as I jumped into the steam-filled stall, Max switched the music over to my shower tunes playlist. I recognized the opening riffs of Change by John Waite from the Vision Quest soundtrack, Geffen Records, 1985.
That was weird. Change was weird.
I was trying to sing it like John Waite, but man, I probably didn't pull it off. Go ahead. What do you got here? You tell us about this fine feature film that we have.
All right. So, little synopsis breakdown. Prior to enlisting, Private Joker is a high school wrestler, but not the fun kind that involves Macho Man Randy Savage or Junkyard Dog. We're going to cover that next week.
Yeah, we are.
Instead, he's attempting to drop weight to fight an intimidating 167-pound 19-year-old, and I air quoted that because this dude is jacked that he's going to fight.
So old.
Shoot, right? So there's a love story in here where this South Jersey girl makes her way into his town, or her car breaks down. It's a nonsensical story, and he decides a good idea is to let this hot homeless chick live with him and his dad. So anyway, she comes in. His dad, who is Captain Bogomil from freaking Beverly Hills Cop, lets her move in. And the final 30 minutes of this movie is just basically the Karate Kid to the Journey song that's in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it has all Karate Kid sans the crane kick in it toward the end. But this continues the tradition of great, and I do mean great 80s movie soundtrack. I mean, we've got them here on the screen for you, but running through them, I mean, just these are all chart toppers. Right, you've got Only the Young by Journey, Hungry for Heaven by Dio, Hot-Blooded Foreigner, Heart in My Heart by Quarterflash, and then, of course, Crazy for You by Madonna, which was a smash. Change by John Waite, which we're going to talk about, and No More Words by Berlin, which, I promise you, if you don't recognize those songs, go back and throw them into YouTube. You've heard them all before.
Oh, yeah.
So I gotta ask you, Albert. 1985 was killing it for soundtracks, and this is just one of the 1985 tracks that are out there. So I'm going to run through some movies that were big in 1985 in terms of soundtracks. You tell me where it ranks.
Okay.
A View to a Kill, St. Elmo's Fire, Goonies, Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Back to the Future, The Last Dragon, and freaking Lady Hawk.
Oh, man. Sheesh. So this is another heart and mind thing. My heart's with Lady Hawk. My mind is
Get out of here.
My mind is with I'm gonna have to go Breakfast Club, man. Just because there's so many big iconic songs on there.
Yeah, it's good. I'd probably put it third, but after Breakfast Club and Back to the Future.
Yep.
Goonies was probably, I would say now Vision Quest beats Goonies, but as a kid, Goonies would have won just on Good Enough alone. Exactly. Just on that video.
Yep.
It would have won. So Star Wars trivia for you there, Albert, about this movie. The band in this movie actually plays the Ewok theme at the end of Return of the Jedi as he's coming out onto the mat. So those films were being filmed at the same time.
So you're talking about the original Ewok song, Yub Nub.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Not the
I keep forgetting that these kids with their whatnots keep taking the best things out of Star Wars films.
Yep.
But yeah. So it has to be true. When was the last time you saw this?
Well, I watched it as part of the homework. So probably about 4 or 5 days ago. But prior to that, oh man, it's been a while. It's been
all right. So this movie
20 years.
It didn't have a huge budget, right? Didn't have a huge budget to make Vision Quest. But I gotta think most of the budget was spent on this soundtrack, right? It had to be.
To secure the
If
artists and all that.
yeah, because Crazy for You appears 4 freaking times in this movie. Only the Young by Journey, 4 freaking times in the movie, including an instrumental of it in the movie. Like,
Right. I think it's when he's working out or doing the montage piece of it or whatever. Like he's running or something.
So that's the crap thing about this movie. There is a part of this movie, and your brain subconsciously put it in there, a memory of a montage scene, because there should be. There's a scene where he's going to his grandfather and, you know, he's training and she's like, go. And you're just expecting the Rocky montage. It never happens. Instead,
the vision that I see is him running on that, see what I did there? Is him running on the bridge. And I don't know what he's doing there, but I associate with it. Oh yeah, he's working out. Yeah.
Maybe he's on his way to Asgard.
He's on the Bifrost. You know, if you watch the original trailer, like they don't even try to market this movie as being its own thing. Like if you watch the trailer, it's like, if you liked Rocky, then watch Vision Quest. Like they're trying to ride the momentum of something like Rocky. And I think they mentioned another movie too. I forget in that trailer. The voiceover mentions another movie that you should watch if you like. Or if you like that movie, you'll like this movie.
I can't remember. The producers had just come off of another big movie that had a great soundtrack. I can't remember what it was. Yep. So his love interest is this older woman, although in real life, Matthew Modine was only like a year younger than she was. But this chick is nasty, bro. And as someone who has spent some time in Jersey, yeah, that's probably a pretty accurate portrayal of what was happening, because first of all, this dude's got issues. This guy has got to go more than Artemis. This dude must go see a therapist. This dude is crazy. Talking about sex constantly in this movie, and this chick is talking just as nasty. I'm going to say 80% of the time. It's crazy.
And there's that scene where he comes into her bedroom and he's like trying to advance on her, and she's like telling him no, and he keeps doing it. And it's, you know, again, it's a different time. Not that it doesn't justify or make it okay, but this isn't uncommon. Like we see this in a lot of movies during the 80s because that's where people were doing, right or wrong. And today, they wouldn't fly. Like that would be, you would see that, and it would be in the movie for the sole purpose of saying this isn't right. Where back then we probably all knew it wasn't right, but that wasn't the point of it. It was more focused on you've got somebody who really likes somebody else, and they're not going to stop to get what they want if it means crossing borders or doing things that we today probably would shun and find very inappropriate to do.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? So I've been married for 25 years, and I think part of the reason why is because I'm not built to be single anymore. I don't even know what the rules are, right? Like, I mean, it seemed like back in the day, like being tenacious, like going out there and like, I'm in love with this, I'm going to make her know as much as I can. I'm going to write her poetry and send her letters. Man, I think they'd call the police on what my game was back in the day. Yes. Like my game was, I'm going to wear them down until they're just like, okay, fine, I'll go out with you. Let's go. But today, I think there would just be a warrant issued or something.
Yes. And how many movies can you think of where that was the protagonist character was after a woman, sometimes a male, but predominantly women, and they would stop at nothing. I mean, do you think about like Say Anything?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that next week. Same concept. She doesn't want to see you, doesn't want to take your call, doesn't. Okay, I'm going to be at your house. Dude, I'm out here with the stereo. Man, someone is going to get maced.
Cops called.
Yeah, it's going to be ridiculous.
Yep. Yeah. So anyways, this is I mean, it's an okay movie. It's not like one of my favorites, and it wasn't one of my favorites even as a kid. I think the storyline is kind of, we've seen it many times before. I think the biggest thing, I really like the John Waite song from this. I know I don't think you're a big John Waite fan.
Oh, no. I love John Waite.
Oh, just not this song.
No, but this is a great song.
Oh, okay.
So I will have you know that my favorite version of this, right? Because this is a cover song. Mm-hmm. It's not like, I hate that John Waite gets credit for it, right? But I do think that this is a very appropriate song for this chapter. So if you've never heard Change, and Albert can do the refrain again for you if you want to hear it.
Nowhere on key.
I don't think that's even close. Are we thinking of the same song?
Yeah, we are.
So John Waite's only had one number one song, and this isn't it, right? He's British. He's from Lancashire. But this song is about the cost of losing relationships in order to pursue your goals. So if you hear like even the first couple of verses, right? He's talking about that. Like, hey, you're leaving, you know, you're unhappy, and you're unhappy because I'm focused on all this. And it's really would be her position singing to him about this song.
You're
But
talking about it like there's a parallel here with Ready Player One.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
there is. What do you think?
No, I get it. And we're going to talk about another song here too, where it seems like an off reference, but if you think about the lyrics, I think you're right. I think there's again, it's hard to find stuff in the Ready Player One novel that was not put in there for a purpose. Yeah, these are great
Right.
songs and great references and movies and all that stuff, but there's some thought behind a lot of these references, and you really kind of have to dig sometimes, and that's why we do this show. So
Yeah, but he didn't have to dig, right? So Ernie didn't have to dig the same way that we wouldn't have to. There are songs that trigger emotion with us, or there. If you think about it, and we've talked about it before, that the music we love is the soundtrack to our lives, and that there are songs that instantly transport you to a certain time or place or emotion or feeling, something memorable that occurred in your life, right? I mean, I'm sure you have one. I mean, are there? Yeah. Oh, give me an example of one that you got,
like a song that
immediately triggers.
I would say anything. Well, yeah, like Journey. For one, there was, when we were driving up here, like something that really happened that was significant in my life was us moving from Michigan to Texas, and I didn't want to leave. That was my home. I was 10 years old, 11 years old at the time when we did it, maybe a little bit younger. Yeah, 10 years old, and I didn't want to leave. And all the way up here, I'd never heard Journey, never heard that music, but we were catching it on the way on the radio, and it was one of the things one of the highlights that I remember. I liked the music a lot, and it's one of my favorite bands. But yeah, like anytime I hear the Journey songs, I'm immediately taken back to sitting in the back of that vehicle, driving thousands of miles, from Michigan down to Texas, and just the sights and the sounds and the things that we were going through and all that. I mean, it triggers a lot of memories for me. What about you?
No, I'm the same. I could come up with dozens of examples, and we're going to talk about one in a little bit, so I'm not going to spoil it for you.
Yeah.
But this song was actually written by Holly Knight, and for her band Spider in 1981. You can find that version out on the internet. It sounds quite similar to the John Waite version. John Waite's version is far better in terms of production and has far less synth. So the Spider version has a lot of synthesizer in it, but the vocal arrangement's about 80% there for the most part. And she's gone so far as to say that she prefers the John Waite version to the version that her band produced. And she went on to be a pretty notable songwriter. I mean, she did Simply the Best by Tina Turner. She did Ragdoll for Aerosmith and Obsession for Animotion. So she was pretty active in the 1980s and really found her calling within songwriting, and, decided she could just lose the band.
Yeah. We didn't really touch on it much, but I guess the other standout thing for this movie was that Madonna. Like, I originally, before you took this as being the one that you wanted to cover, I had already written like who it starred by, and it literally said starring Madonna, co-starring Madonna, with a special appearance by Madonna, because she's showcased in this movie so much that you forget that she really wasn't as popular as, she would go on to do other things. What is it? Suddenly or what is it? Not Suddenly.
Yeah,
Susan.
That was it.
Suddenly Susan? Yeah. That doesn't
that
sound right.
No, that's the show with Brooke Shields,
Susan.
right?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Desperately Seeking Susan.
Desperately Seeking.
Landed it. Boom. Nailed the landing. First try. Desperately Seeking Susan. Seeing her and acting in that. But, they showcased her a lot in this movie, and like held the camera stayed on her at times. And you're like, okay, who is this person? Why is it? But I mean, it's a great song. It's one of the classic love ballads of the 80s. And you get to your point. This gets played all throughout the movie. But
yeah, so popular, in fact, was she that freaking this movie for international release was renamed Crazy for You.
Yes.
In a lot of countries, including Australia.
All right, because it was Madonna. We won't spend any time on this, but I just want to point out, if you look deeply in the credits, music score composed and performed by Tangerine Dream. Outstanding. Love those guys.
Well, thank God they had so much Journey in there, so we didn't have to listen to a bunch of Tangerine Dream.
Oh, boy. Okay, let's talk about this one here. This is the They Might Be Giants. And so where the heck did my notes go? Because I was going to give you the quote. Here it is. It says the quote, "I cleared my throat and recited my passphrase. Each word appeared on my display as I said it. No one in the world ever gets what they want, and that is beautiful." So that is a line lifted directly from a song called "Don't Let's Start" by Might Be Giants. Now, we did cover They Might Be Giants back in episode 6, part 5, so we're not going to break them down or talk about kind of how they came to be or talk about the crazy phone number that you can dial whenever you want to, and it'll leave a message, or you can leave a message and speak to them. But they were a band that were around. They started in 1982. They're still around to this day. They're made up of John Flansburgh and John Leno. The song, though, "Don't Let's Start," was released on their 1986 album. This is their eponymous album, so of the same name, They Might Be Giants. And in 1986, and then it was re-released a little bit later as a remix, or I guess a mixed version of it back in 1997. What I'm showing you here are the two albums. So on the left-hand side, this is their very first album, They Might Be Giants. And on the right is They Might Be Giants, then the early years. Now, the early years, the versions are identical. The cool thing about the one on the right, it's basically 3 albums altogether. It's got some rarities and B-sides on there. There are a total of 72 songs on this album. Like there's 36 on one and 36 on side 2, if you will, which is really cool. But the cool thing about this, and we were just talking about this, is the lyrics themselves. It's a really great, catchy tune. I was singing it right before we came on the air because I haven't stopped listening to They Might Be Giants all week. But there is one part towards the very end of this song where the lyric says, "I don't want to live in this world anymore. I don't want to live in this world." Now, the song is it sounds kind of bleak, right? You hear the lyrics of, nobody gets what they want and everything is beautiful. That line, the next line even after that, gets a little bit darker too. It says, "Everybody dies frustrated and sad, and that is beautiful. They want what they are not, and I wish they would stop saying," and that gets into some weird deputy dog, da da da, whatever. But the song itself is kind of down, right? When I think it's John Leno has been asked about, like, how did he come up with the lyrics? I think it's cool. He just basically said, "I don't know, I made it up. I don't know where the lyrics came from. I just made it up," and which I thought was really cool. So there's really no deep meaning into the song other than him probably just spouting off stream of consciousness stuff. If you get a chance, listen to the song. It's pretty good. There's also a music video. It starts with the picture on the left hand says "Don't Let's Start," and of course it's They Might Be Giants, so it's pretty wacky, over the top. They are who they are, and this is probably a good a picture of who they are. So anyway, we haven't had a chance to talk about They Might Be Giants. I know where you stand with them, but for the audience, where are they with you in terms of like favorite bands or likability and all that?
I'll say They Might Be Giants is in my top 10. So for those that are on my Facebook social media, you know that it was probably the second album, They Might Be Giants Flood, that I put in my greatest albums, or you have 10 albums on an island kind of game. They Might Be Giants Flood's always on there. And part of that reason is for what we were just talking about, right? It invokes memories of where we were in high school and who we were. I don't know that I think that a album personifies my outlook on life at the time, even to this day. That whole wide-eyed, most of their music, unlike this music, most of their music's highly optimistic. And even the stuff that is depressing lyrically is oftentimes put into a tempo that's upbeat, which makes it feel very tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
And so a memory I have of They Might Be Giants Flood is you and I sitting in Miss Lathin's English class, and we're singing Dead. Now, Dead is a duet at parts, right? There's an opening verse, and then there's a refrain.
Yep.
And then there's a part where the verse is sung over the refrain, right? And Albert and I sang this in English class one time and had to write our names on the book for doing so.
For getting in trouble. Yep.
Yeah. But
it was quite a performance for everybody
there.
It
may be and I'm someone who loves to sing, and Albert was in choir when we were in high school, just like I was. And I still sing today. I love going to karaoke. Albert, not so much, but I love it. Right. Like I'm going to go. Sadly, every coworker that works for me has heard me sing hundreds of songs, and we probably have a karaoke party every other weekend. But it is the only song I remember that you and I would sing together.
Yep.
I heard you sing, you heard me sing, but a song that we both would sing together, it was They Might Be Giants, Dead.
Oh, yeah.
And I love it.
Yep. No, those were good times. And the part that comes to mind is the "So I won't sit at home anymore."
Yeah.
And I don't remember who had what part. Maybe we changed.
I came back as I don't know how much we can sing. I don't know what the rules are on YouTube.
No, I think you can sing, but I don't think anybody. It doesn't make for a good entertainment listening
Well,
podcast.
maybe the way you do it.
That's right, yeah.
And that's why I had the lead on this song.
Yeah, it was a good song.
That attitude's going to get you nowhere, mister.
All right, we're way over on time, so let's get to Max Headroom, and I won't spend too much time here, just in the interest of time and the fact that we've talked about Max Headroom quite a bit already. So, but I did want to talk. I said we'd come back to Max Headroom because they come back to it here, and I do want to talk about Max Headroom series, and I want to talk about the ABC one that came out in the U.S. There was a UK one that came out right after the movie 20 Minutes into the Future, and that was, I think, ran 3 seasons in the UK, but the one in the U.S. was on ABC from 1987 1988. Let me give you the reference. System agent software was highly configurable with hundreds of pre-programmed personalities to choose from. I programmed mine to look, sound, and behave like Max Headroom, the computer-generated star of the late 80s talk show, a groundbreaking cyberpunk TV series, and a slew of Coke commercials, which we'll talk about here too. So again, 2 seasons from 1987 1988. There were a total, I think, of 14 episodes. 6 in the first season, 8 in the second season. It got canceled halfway through the second season. And by this point, I mean, by 1988, Max Headroom had kind of run its course, right? He wasn't as cool as he was when the movie came out. Certainly the British had their 3 seasons and kind of caught that the momentum there, but he was kind of winding down at this point. This show did have a lot of returning characters like Edison Carter. There was Theora Jones, Bryce Lynch. We talked about all those in the last, or episode 16. There, and then we got Max Headroom, who came back, and the premise of the show was kind of interesting. They were basically Edison Carter, and you can see here at the left. We talked about this too. The kid that they recast as Bryce Lynch, which is also the name that Wade takes on while he's living in the apartment. But they recast him. These guys were all part of he was going around and basically busting these big TV corporations in these networks, right? And he was finding out and exposing them for some of the really, I don't know what you want to call it, but he was exposing them for some of the shady practices that they were doing or the exploitation of certain things. They dealt with a lot of really sensitive topics that today are actually kind of interesting, like reality TV, right? Where are the boundaries of reality TV? Much kind of like The Running Man. You know, at what point do we become just so numb to it that we accept and allow anything to happen on reality TV for the sake of entertainment? They were kind of touching on that. They dealt with like genetic engineering at one point. They dealt with like privacy. Where does the line of privacy and how much information a corporation has from you, and what should they do with that? Should they use it? How can they use it? I mean, these are all real things that we're dealing with today when we think about social media, all the stuff that happened with Facebook and some of the other companies that are going on right now. They were touching all this. Now, the key difference is back when the show was running, computers weren't that powerful. So they were, in their head, they were thinking TV, this is where all this is going to come from. This is where the big evil is. And today it's a little bit different. We think primarily of maybe, IT companies and social media groups that are kind of data mining all this stuff. So,
and probably a more accurate reflection of what IT would be than NCIS is today.
Right. Still above the level of credibility in NCIS.
That's right. This is not even CGI. It's just practical effects, still better than NCIS.
And Max Headroom actually helps out in this TV series. It's interesting. He doesn't really, by this point, his role is like relegated to, he'll come on mostly, he's very used very sparingly throughout the TV series. He comes on, he'll do a little bit, he'll do a little comedy thing. Maybe it's related to what's happening in the episode. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just a kind of like what you would see a stand-up comedian talk about for 30 seconds, right? And every once in a while he would help, since he was in the network, if you will. He was part of the system. They would rely on him to kind of help expose these guys or, bring people to justice and that sort of thing. But he wasn't always kind of like a main character that they went to. He was just there and really was there for all the laughs and giggles and the jokes and making the pop culture references of the time. So, all right. So let's talk about this, though, because I did want to mention. So Max Headroom, obviously, at the height, probably around 1986. The U.S., we saw him in 1987, but there was a a famous signal hijacking that happened on November 22nd, 1987. As you can see, I've got some gifs here of this person that's doing this. Now, the two TV stations were both in Chicago, Illinois. One we all know probably is WGN, which is a pretty big TV station. And the other was WTTF, which was the PBS public access station at the time. They were hijacked right after, I think on one of them, they were showing the news on WGN. And then on the PBS station, they had just started the Doctor Who of all things. They started a Doctor Who episode. And suddenly the signal gets completely taken over. And you got this guy right here who comes on. He's wearing like this Max Headroom mask. He's got he's got a suit on. That in the background is it looks kind of like maybe like a gate or something. And he's got this, he's doing something to kind of warp it. So he's trying to obviously mimic the Max Headroom thing. And it's the most bizarre 28 seconds of just stuff that you'll ever see. You can go on YouTube. You can watch this video. It's almost really creepy. His voice is kind of distorted. He's saying a lot of different things that don't make sense. They don't go together. They're just random talk. But at one point, he mentions that he holds up a Pepsi can, which you can kind of see in the bottom right hand corner here. He's throwing the Pepsi can, but he holds up the Pepsi can. He says, "Catch the wave," and then he throws it to the ground. The video ends at about 22 or 24 seconds in. He bends over, pulls his pants down, and then what looks to be a female hand comes out with a fly swatter and starts slapping his behind. At this point, 28 seconds in, finally WGN and these TV stations realized that their signal had been hijacked, so they cut the feed, and it never happened again for them. It did happen. There were other instances where feeds were hijacked, but the crazy thing is they never found this person. Even to this day, they don't know who did this. They know how they did it, and they put in measures to ensure that it didn't happen again right after this. But to this day, this person has never been caught. We don't know. I mean, we assume it's a male, but because the voice is distorted and everything else, it's indistinguishable. But yeah, interesting that this person decided to hack those two TV stations and use the character of Max Headroom in order to do so. Had you heard about this?
Absolutely. Yeah. So 1987, two people involved, right? And I would say the predominant theory, and the cool thing about, I will say my favorite thing about the internet is the collective intelligence of our world. I don't know if you recently watched Netflix Unsolved Mysteries versus the Robert Trap from the 1980s, where people were calling in, right? People were calling in with, "Hey, I've got a clue," or something. I'm telling you, Netflix launched this Unsolved Mysteries issue, their new series. And I would say within 2 hours, Reddit had solved half the cases. I mean, there were just people out there just putting information together. These tiny, small towns where these mysteries occurred had no idea the power of 1,000 nerds.
Yes.
Just scouring through every fact frame, every audio clip, every background, and this was no exception. So within Reddit, there is a prevailing J and K theory that's out there, and I'm not going to get into it. It's very, very long. But you feel free to just go to Reddit, look for J and K theory, Max Headroom, and you will find a very convincing argument of who actually committed this set of brothers, referred to as J and K. Even the person that purports the theory doesn't want to give their names up, but and gives evidence for where it happened, transcripts for every line that is muttered, mumbled, and what they're referencing, so they know exactly. And all they have strong correlation for everything in this video. But I'm not sure what the statute of limitations are or anything on this, but I got to think that at least through Reddit, this is not a super well-kept secret.
So is this person, these J&L people, are they still alive to this day?
JK, yeah.
JK,
they're
sorry.
brothers. Yeah, it was a brother and his little brother, according to this. And for most people, it interrupted, you're right, the news on one station and then Doctor Who on the other.
Yeah, outrage. I'm sure.
Hilarious.
Well, that's weird. All right,
They did the same thing in The Running Man. It worked for them.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
You got to hijack the station sometimes.
We've brought up more Arnold Schwarzenegger references in this show than I think we ever have. There's two Running Man, and then you were spouting off all kinds of stuff over there from...
Oh, did you hear that sound?
Yeah, I heard the sound.
That was
Clack.
the sound of a Coke opening.
Clack.
Let me hear yours.
Well, I'll get it here. Hold on. Let me get to this real quick. Let's talk about New Coke. Um, so, and it's the same quote really, where he mentions that Max Headroom was, excuse me, that 80s talk show, a groundbreaking cyberpunk series, and a slew of Coke commercials. Because he did. He was the Max Headroom, which we'll talk about here in 1 second, was the spokesperson, if you will, for New Coke. All right, so let's talk about New Coke. So New Coke was around from 1985 to 1992. It was, so let's say, picture this, if you will. You're the Coca-Cola company. For a number of years, you guys have been the dominant soda pop company brand, right? Suddenly, you start to realize coming into the 80s that your sales are starting to decline. You're down to, at one point, you were as high as 60%. Now you're falling under 24%, and it looks like that trend is going to continue. The reason why is you've got these baby boomers who are suddenly starting to get very health conscious. They start drinking less soda. They start drinking more water. They start trying to drink more diet drinks than Tab, right? Tab is starting to kind of rise here in the early 80s. And your share is starting to fall. So you're getting beat down. On top of that, you've got you've got people like Pepsi. We saw the Michael Jackson thing, right? They're going to great lengths to ensure that their brand is out there, and they're going against this longtime rival of Coca-Cola. So what do? Well, if you are, this question was posed to Sergio Zyman, who was the VP of marketing, and Brian Dyson, by the president at the time of Coca-Cola, by a man by the name of Roberto, I think it's Guzueta. Let's just go with that, right? And he basically says, look, there's no sacred cows here. Whatever we need to do to get our market share back up, we're going to do it. And if that means we need to change the formula of Coke, then so be it. And so they took that advice and they executed on it. And so this is their plan. They wanted to take this 99-year-old formula of Coca-Cola, throw it out the window, come up with a new, sweeter version of Coke to compete with Pepsi, which had a sweeter taste, wrap it in a lot of edgier, more modern marketing materials, and call this whole thing was called Project Kansas. And there's a story behind Project Kansas and why that was called, but it's not important. So here we go. Fast forward to New York. New Coke was born on April 23rd, 1985, and before its launch, it did really well with like all of the taste tests that they did and all of the like the marketing, all the pre-launch stuff. They went around, sent this out, did surveys, focus groups. It did really well, but they left out one crucial piece of this. They were targeting people in the northern states. So they roll Coke out, New Coke comes out, does really well in those states. All those trends continued. It came out in the South, and there was like an uproar, a huge uproar of people that didn't like, I mean, because, we're from the South, right? You don't go around touching our stuff for the most part. You hear that all the time. They don't, you don't want this change. You can, and they were even labeling this as like a Yankee drink at one point. People were up in an uproar about the fact that they had changed this new taste. And people, you couldn't differentiate between, like here in Texas, right, or in the South, we like Coke so much that we don't even distinguish the brands. Like, so, Will, you go into a restaurant and you're the waiter, and I tell you, can I get a Coke? What's your next question to me?
What kind of Cokes you got?
Exactly, right. We use the word Coke to say, like, you ask somebody what Coke do you, or what kind of Coke you want, they're going to say, what do you got? And then they'll rattle off Dr. Pepper, Pepsi. It's all Coke to us, right? So that's kind of like the mentality here in the South, and really why that backlash happened, and it was huge. There was their 1-800 number, their Get Coke line, went from 400 calls a day to almost 1,500 calls per day as soon as that started happening, as soon as this happened. There were people that were calling the hotline. They were grieving. They were going through the stages of a loss because the product had changed and this formula had changed. There was boycotts that were happening. The stand-up comedians across all the late-night shows were having a field day with this left and right. Pepsi went as far as to change they came out with a new slogan called "Now I Know Why Coke Did It," because they were trying to capitalize on the fact that it changed and that they were the reason why, and so you should go to Pepsi at that point. This all kind of came to a head when they pulled everybody together. I mean, the Coke executives got together and said, "Look, we've got to do something." And I'm going to fast forward through a lot of this stuff, but essentially what happened was they changed this thing 79 days after launch. They left New Coke out there, but they said, we'll bring back the original formula. They ended up calling that Coke Classic a little bit later. It was such a big change, so much newsworthy that ABC News and Peter Jennings broke into General Hospital during the 80s. They broke into that broadcast to announce that Coke was going to bring out the original classic formula in response to the backlash that people were receiving from the new Coke. Let me hit the slide here because I want to talk about this gentleman down here in the right-hand corner. That's Bill Cosby. When New Coke launched in 1985, he was the official spokesperson. He was out there. They had his name out there front and center. You think Dr. Huxtable, right? This is probably at a height of where he was with the Cosby Show. And he was just overall really famous, especially during the 80s. But his credibility took a huge hit because he was out here pimping this thing when it didn't really do well. And I got to tell Mr. Cosby, I mean, you got bigger problems that you're going to have to solve a little bit later. This was the least of your problems right here.
Wow.
But so let me pause right there because I want to. Do you remember? I have so many crazy, vivid memories of all of this going on. And I was only, 12, 13 years old when this happened.
I do. So it all starts with Alfonso Ribeiro, right? So it starts with him and his Pepsi commercial. It leads to the Pepsi Challenge, which is the taste test between Coke and Pepsi. And I think if you look at it from a chemical perspective, Pepsi is designed, and do you have Pepsi with you right there?
I do. Well, you do that. I'm going to grab, so you keep talking. I'm going to reach down into my cooler and grab the 3 cans I've got for the taste test.
Let's start with the Pepsi Coke Challenge. So the Pepsi Challenge was first in this, and that's all over the United States. Pepsi launched this program, as you can see I have, where you had Pepsi against Coca-Cola in a sip test. So we're going to have Albert perform a sip test for us live here, give his feedback, and then I am going to tell you why you think the things you do about your taste test.
So what do you want me to taste first? Do you want me to taste the Coke first or the Pepsi?
Yeah, Coke first and then Pepsi.
Okay. All right.
Although this was a blind taste test that was performed back in the 80s, but we're just going to have to go with it and just...
All right, so I'm going to open up this. I've got a 16 ounce. They don't even make the smaller cans anymore, as you can kind of see there, the comparison. But 16 ounces of Coke. I'm not going to drink all this tonight because I will be up. Here we go. Let me put it to the microphone. There we go. There's the pop. And all right, so this is Coke going down.
Just a sip. You only got 2 ounces. That's all you get to drink.
I like it. I do like Coke. I like it a lot. Yep.
All right, give me the next one.
All right, here's my Pepsi. So I am biased. I actually do like. I know I like Pepsi more than Coke, but that Coke was really good. I don't know if it's because I'm thirsty and talking. All right, here we go with the Pepsi.
No more than 2 ounces, sir. Just one mouthful. I'm going to make another drink while you're doing that.
Yeah, so I like Pepsi more.
And why? So what is it about the flavor of Pepsi that makes you like it more, do you think?
First off, okay, Pepsi tastes sweeter to me, but it's not it's smoother. I don't know how to explain it. Like the Coke has like this really coarse feeling in the back of my throat as I'm drinking. It almost overtakes the sweetness, like the flavor itself. Whereas the Pepsi, I get the sweet, and it's a little bit smoother going back than the Coke. I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever, but that's what I'm feeling.
Yeah, so interestingly, if you look at it scientifically, Pepsi is built to win a taste challenge for at least one of the reasons that you described. And that's that if you look at the difference between Coke and Pepsi, the first is that when you're tasting Coke, Coke is generally seen as a smoother flavor because it has a raisiny vanilla feel to it, right? That's what you would typically taste if you were drinking a Coke if you've never thought about it. The difference is that you have more citrus in a Pepsi, and it's far sweeter.
Yeah.
So it stimulates your mouth more than a Coke would. A Coke should taste relatively dull in contrast to a Pepsi, right, in a sip test. But if you're drinking Coke all day, right, then, or when I say if you're drinking a soda or a pop all day, that in that case, Coke would have a better feel for you in terms of longevity. Yeah.
Yep.
So, but you're right. It started with, again, Alfonso Ribeiro. We're going to start there. Everything begins with him. And then we go to the Pepsi challenge, and Pepsi was absolutely smoking Coke in this. And it wasn't lost on Coke executives, as Albert pointed out. So they decided to reformulate to New Coke. And New Coke, you'll find, has many of the characteristics of Pepsi. So I'm going to have you try New Coke, but not against classic Coke first.
Okay.
New Coke versus Pepsi.
Right.
Because really what they were trying to do, go ahead and drink while we're talking. is they were trying to reformulate something that mimicked Pepsi. Pepsi was absolutely right. They made new Coke, right? And new Coke's reformulation included higher amounts of fructose. It had a pH balance that was more similar to Pepsi. And they added the citric acid, which they hadn't had in previous versions of Coke in Coca-Cola Classic, but had used in Diet Coke. So if Albert happened to have another can there of Diet Coke, he would find that the relationship in terms of taste profile between Diet Coke and New Coke are far more similar than Classic Coke in either one of those two. So give it to me.
So yeah, it's funny you said that because I didn't realize that. I didn't know that, first off. But I don't drink Coke or Pepsi today at all. I mean, I prefer Pepsi over Coke, but all I drink is Diet Coke. Like I drink a lot of Diet Coke, and the first thing that came to mind was this tastes a little. There's a not a little hint, but there's a big hint of Diet Coke in this one. Definitely sweeter. Definitely tastes different than this Coke, and I can see why people were. And I'm holding back up, but I can see why people were so upset with this new formula as opposed to this one, because it tastes night and day difference. I'm sorry. I mean, I don't want to be dramatic about it because it's all relatively kind of in the same family of drinks. But yeah, if I'd been drinking Coke for as long as I have, I mean, we're at 99 years at this point, right? Coming up on the 100th anniversary of Coca-Cola when they decided to change the formula, I'd be a little ticked off because yeah, this is not at all what I remember from the original Coke. All right, so that was Coke in New Coke. So I'm gonna try. Let me try Pepsi real quick, and then I'm gonna do the New Coke one more time. So that's Pepsi. That's still really good. I like that one. Okay, and then here I go with New Coke. Yeah, it's got a it's almost got like I'm gonna say a cotton candy taste to it. Well, I can feel my blood sugar level rising.
Wow.
I don't drink a lot of sugar honestly anymore. But
Calm down.
So when I get it, it's like
actually, I'm the same way as you are. Like, I don't know what it is about my older age. I can't handle super sweet drinks anymore. I can't handle like I used to love Big Red.
Yes,
dude. If I drink a Big Red, I'm a hot mess.
Yep.
And in fact, I have lots of Coke at the house, but primarily because I have kids. And the only thing I use Coke for, as I joke at the office all the time, like I don't drink mixers without alcohol. So I don't typically drink Coke. I'm more likely to drink a water or a vitamin water or juice than I am to drink, and most commonly, because we are from the proper South,
right?
Some of that delicious sweet tea now here.
Yep. No, absolutely. Okay, well, let me get through the rest of the Coke history here. I've just got some real quick pictures. I've got some advertisements, right? Here's the history.
Yeah, you're not showing nothing.
Oh,
sorry, but while you do that, I'm gonna do the new Coke challenge that we've got here going on.
Got it. Here's the best just got better. Coke is it. Here's an article that talked about Coke switch. So after this all had happened, this is an article here. I don't know where this is from. It's like some advertising age is the name of the company, but they're talking about how they had to switch it back because of all the backlash that they received from changing the formula. Now, the cool thing was, so if you think about where Coke was financially prior to the releasing of New Coke, they didn't really, this actually worked to their favor. Once they released the original formula back into the market, their sales within 6 months had gone back to where it was and actually even further higher. I mean, their sales skyrocketed at this point. And if you think about this gentleman, who was at the Giorgio, or was it George? What was his name now? I forget. The CEO, right? When he took over, Roberto Guzzetta, when he took over, the stock price of Coca-Cola was actually more when he left because of what happened with New Coke and then bringing back Coca-Cola Classic. He's also, it's been said that he went to his death drinking New Coke and preferred New Coke. I think he was just kind of trying to save face. Nobody was fired over this. Not a single person was let go, fired at the company for the debacle that is New Coke. And primarily it's because some people say had they not gone through all of this, they wouldn't have come out of that slump that they were in. They had two products at this point. They had New Coke, they had Classic Coke, and it was relabeled as Coca-Cola Classic, as you can see there. And so the way they decided to kind of keep this wave going, if you will, is they remarketed and rebranded New Coke and targeted a newer section of the populace. They went after the younger teenage kids, or the demographic was like 25 and under, I think is what they were going for. But they decided they were going to bring in Max Headroom, of all people, since he was an edgy character that kids were relating to because of all of the things that we've talked about already. So yeah, they came up with this whole tagline of "Catch the Wave." You can see here, there's a number of commercials out there. So they kept this around, and this New Coke went on. I think it went all the way up till what was it, 1980, 1992? I think they rebranded it in 1990. I may be getting my dates wrong here, so I do apologize. But in 1990, it was rebranded as Coke 2. So Coke and then the 2. I think I've got a picture of that. Maybe not. I don't. But and then 2 years later, it was finally done. I think it was officially, the plants were closed in 1992, and since then they really haven't haven't brought anything back for it. Although, well, let me pause there before we talk about that. What were your feeling? You did a little taste test there, Coke, New Coke. If you had to pick between one of those two, or even Pepsi, if you want to throw that in there, which one would you go with here?
Pepsi. I'm a Pepsi guy. Pepsi, I think is, I don't know what it is about Coke when you drink it on its own, especially if you drink it out of a can. And I rarely, if ever, and I mean, it is one of my OCD things, is drinking out of cans. I'm only doing it now because I don't have any other glass options. That's not true.
That's true.
I do have a champagne flute. So, and I'm afraid that the metallic, look at the legs on this, right? It's got a bit of an effervescence to it. Let me...
pinky up. Nicely done there.
Yeah. It's walking through the woods of a metallic jungle. I don't know what it is about Coke on its own, but it does have for me, like almost a metallic afterbite to it when you drink it. And I think the citrus and sugar of Pepsi kind of overwhelms that underlying flavor to it. I think New Coke, and I've been drinking it throughout the night, is closer to RC than it is Pepsi. So if they were trying to replicate a flavor, I think it probably falls in that spectrum more than it does into the Pepsi house. I don't have a problem with either one of them, really. I mean, in terms of what I prefer between these two products, Pepsi's going to beat them both, in my opinion. And I would have to drink way more New Coke. I think there's just a familiarity with Coca-Cola and the flavor of Coca-Cola that's a bit of a comfort. And when I was in the military, that was a big deal, right? So you'd be deployed to locations that didn't have soda. So you would go, 4 months without a soda. And the first time you're able to get one, it's almost unbearable.
Right.
It's unbearable. If you can go that long without having any caffeinated beverages and you have one, you're like, wow, why did I ever drink one of these? Because they are chock full of sugar, sir.
Yep. Oh, and you can definitely taste it.
Oh, no, it's quite good, sir.
Yes. The GR, I'm pretty sure it was rebranded as Coke Stay Husky Kids.
Husky Kids.
Way to tie that back to the beginning of the show.
Nicely done. And once again, now I'm going to have nightmares tonight. I appreciate that, Albert.
Yeah. They're so and just going back to Max Headroom, because I do want to tie it back to the novel. When Max Headroom would come out, he would say "Catch the wave," and that was kind of the gimmick. That ran for about 2 years. That ad or that campaign, and it was really successful by all accounts. It was hugely successful, so much that we had the signal hijacking, and it was redone there. So how we got the Coke, and if you're listening to the show, you probably are a big fan of Stranger Things. I would assume you aren't. If you haven't seen it, you need to go watch it. But Stranger Things season 3 came out, and New Coke was right around the same time. So I think 1985 is when that season takes place, and it's thrown out all throughout this season. There's a number of occurrences where you get to see the New Coke product, but as part of the marketing, let me step down here real quick. As part of the marketing stuff that they did release a limited edition version of Coca-Cola. Let me see if I can hold that up. So Coca-Cola, Stranger Things, they came out with this, and you could order this. I forget how much it was. I think it was like $20. It wasn't much. You got 2 cans of New Coke, and you got 2 bottles of Coca-Cola Classic. So they released about 500,000 cans of total for New Coke as part of this promotion. And some of these they actually released some of them in some of the vending machines in New York, I think in Los Angeles as well. So you could pick them up there. Otherwise, you had to do the mail order for them. And the cool thing is, sorry, I'm making a lot of noise here, but the cool thing was they branded, this is a Coke Zero that came with it as well. So you can kind of see that. And I didn't want to open this. It does have the Stranger Things logo on it. You can see it right there. And then this new Coke, I don't know if you caught that, but it has it's got the Stranger Things logo on that as well. So I had not drank new Coke. I mean, I remember drinking it when it first came out, but it's been, 30 years at least that I've not had it. And so I was really looking forward to it. And I remember when this came out and we were already doing the basement, and I ordered this, and this thing sold out within a matter of minutes. It was really hard. There was a lot of people. It brought down the Coca-Cola website, the ordering website when it came out. Today you can still buy it. I think you can buy these on eBay probably for a pretty penny. I think Will can attest to that.
You can buy them on Amazon, $60.
$60.
Prime. You can have it delivered in 2 days.
Nice.
And then my girls fought over the box, so that's why I don't have a box to show you.
Gotcha. But I was excited because when they announced this, I thought, wow, that is perfect. I got to get my hands on this. We'll bring somebody on. At the time, I didn't know who it was going to be, but I wanted to do this whole taste test thing, and it's just been sitting here waiting for that day. So appreciate it that it was with you. Thanks for doing this.
Hey, likewise, brother. Hey, I got a question for you. So as much as vivid as this is for both of us, and probably anybody who was raised in the 80s, the whole new Coke and the elimination of Classic Coke.
Yeah.
How long do you think Classic Coke was off the market? From the time it was replaced with new Coke to the time they broke in and said, guess what? It's coming back, and it hit the market with the Classic label.
So I know that it was 79 days from the point that they stopped manufacturing to the decision that was made to say we were bringing it back. There was probably time to get plants running again and doing all that. I'm going to guess, let's see, within 90, I'm going to call it 90 days. I'm going to guess they expedited this thing to get it out as quickly as possible.
Yeah, you're thinking along the right line. So it's 67 days. So
67, wow.
So within 3 weeks, they had already received close to 500,000 letters from pissed off people.
Right.
So they immediately started what they were going to do for merchandising, marketing for the re-release of Classic Coke almost immediately.
Yeah.
And so 67 days they had it back in production.
Wow.
Crazy.
That's amazing. There's stories of people when they stopped manufacturing the Coke Classic as we know it today, they were buying it overseas because they started in the US, but they couldn't get this distributed worldwide. And so when people found out that you couldn't longer buy it in the US, they were paying crazy prices to get it imported from other countries, Canada, Mexico, and then here's another thing. When it was re-released as Classic Coke, there was another level of backlash. It doesn't get talked about a lot, but there was another level of backlash because people were complaining that it tastes different. And the reason why is because Coke was transitioning from pure cane sugar over into high fructose corn syrup. And so this was their opportunity to go, okay, we're going to start everybody off on the high fructose corn syrup. And there is a difference in the taste. Anybody that goes out to the Costco's we have here down in Texas, you can buy the Coca-Cola from Mexico, which is made with pure cane sugar. They don't make it with corn syrup. It's a very different taste. It is a much sweeter taste.
It's a much better taste.
It's a better taste. It's smoother.
Our kids love, like we've got the bottle because it's typically bottled, right? You're not going to get it canned.
Right.
And it's going to be the same line that you're seeing every other Mexican soda in. And anytime we go out, if we go to a food truck, most food trucks in Texas have Mexican Coke, and we're definitely getting it.
Yes.
I see GR pointed out that, Stranger Things 4 is going to have Crystal Pepsi. But sadly, there are no Crystal Pepsi references in Ready Player One. So we'll just have to see if we'll just add it to the list of things that aren't in Ready Player One that may be in Ready Player Two. So who knows? This time next year, we might be playing that game. But I will tell you, I loved Crystal Pepsi.
I don't know if I did or not. I don't remember. I'm going to say no because I don't remember drinking it.
I'm going to say yes because I thought it was so cool. It was just cool.
It was clear?
Yeah, crystal clear.
All right, I'm going to continue. What?
Go ahead.
I was going to say I'm going to continue drinking my beverages so we can get out of here, though. We got to get out.
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
All right, well, we're going to end the show here. I think that was it. Oh, I meant to show these slides, by the way. There's a zero sugar I never got a regular Coke with a Stranger Things logo on it. Huh. I must have missed that one. All right. Well, that's going to be it for the show. JR, that's his prediction. Cool. I'm going to.
Oh, it was a random. I thought he had some inside knowledge. JR, you can't just be posting things, getting me all excited.
Yeah.
Like you got the inside track on what Stranger Things 4 is going to look like, because I'm going to watch it, and you know who's going to be back in Stranger Things 4. I mean, it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
That we could do a whole nother podcast on that show.
Well, there's plenty of them. I thought about doing it, but I was like, okay, there's 8 million Stranger Things podcasts already out. But yeah,
well, what I noticed is a lot of the podcasts that are out there related to Stranger Things are not people our age, right? So they almost have to get spoon-fed the references. Like when we watch with the girls, I have to point out references to them in the show. Otherwise, they wouldn't get half of the inside jokes. It's almost like what we were talking about last episode about nods that exist. And if you don't have the reference, like in Buckaroo Banzai versus the Avengers series, you're not getting half of these jokes.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Dean is coming back. Yeah, he's been working out a la Vision Quest. Mm-hmm. Hey, before we get out of here, one last quick thing. So if you are a Patreon subscriber, I am going to be sending you some of these. And it's not showing up on my green screen very well, but these are holographic, the basement logo stickers. So, and that's a way for me to apologize. I haven't been able to get the shows edited as quickly as I wanted to. Hopefully you guys are watching and listening on the YouTubes, because those are up there and they'll be up there forever until Google goes away. But I do plan on getting the other episodes edited this weekend and get those out to you as well. So my thanks to you. I'll probably reach out to the Patreon subscribers one-on-one, get a mail address if you want to provide that. If not, totally cool. I get it. I respect your privacy. But I've got 3 stickers here for each of you for hanging in there and being supportive of the show. So thank you guys for doing all that.
Hey, you're welcome, Albert.
Yeah, not you.
I'm a Patreon sponsor. Just give it to me at the next family get together.
I'll give it to you. So before we go, let's see. Chapter 20 is coming up next. So we're going to be talking Falco. Oh my goodness. We'll talk Will Wheaton. That's Will Wilkins' alter ego. Electra Woman and Dinah Girl. We'll talk about Wonder Woman from the 1970s, which should be exciting. In Your Eyes, Peter Gabriel. We already talked about that. WWF, Hulk Hogan, Andre Giant. I think we're going to end with Ultraman. I don't know yet, one of the two, but this is really the first show of Ultraman, because there's a lot of Ultraman still yet to come. All right. I guess that's going to do it for us.
Yeah, you can't anchor on Ultraman, because he's going to get basically a whole chapter at one point.
I'm still debating. We'll see how that goes. I'm not sure just yet. But yeah, all right. Anything before we get out of here? Holy bananas, I'm mopped up on sugar.
Yeah, me too. And alcohol. I'm 5 doubles deep, and I can no longer taste the difference between any of these sodas at this point.
That's hilarious. All right. Well, with that, thanks for everybody that joined us on the live feed tonight, the live shows, and certainly subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you guys want to hear and see more. We'll be back next Wednesday with Chapter 20.
The views and opinions of the Basement hosts are of our own and are not in any way affiliated with Random House or Ernest Klein. All quotes, music, sounds, trademarked, and copyrighted material referenced in the show are owned by the respectful companies and creators and are used by the Basement as fair use for entertainment purposes only. It would take me a month to read this whole disclaimer, but sad to say, I don't have that kind of time.